Welcome to Dead Drifters Society.
All right. Yeah, I think everything's good to go. And you're all good on your end?
Yeah, everything seems good on this end. Yep.
Right on. Well, welcome to the podcast, David Hartlin. How's it going?
Hey, Andrew, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well,
Things
good, man.
here are good. It's a little cold, chilly. Winter set in here, and we don't have much of a winter fishery here, so pretty much tie flies and look for clients.
Yeah, no doubt. You're in Nova Scotia?
Currently, I'm in Nova Scotia. Yeah.
Okay. And that's where you guide out of?
Guide for striped bass out of here, and a little bit of fall Atlantic salmon. But my predominant part of my business is on the west coast of Newfoundland for Atlantic salmon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't you kind of take me down what's currently happening? You said it's winter there, so it's mostly finding clients and tying flies. What are you kind of working on these days, fly-wise?
Fly-wise, I'm just working on regular orders and inventory for future clients and my website and stuff like that. My fly tying stuff pretty much, it's regiment, same stuff every year. It's, I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel. We got salmon flies that work awesome, and I'm not going to try to make new ones.
Yeah. Are those the classics you're tying, or are you tying kind of more of a modern
variation? Modern variation. Like, so the traditional salmon flies that most people think of when they think Atlantic salmon are, your classic featherwing salmon flies. And we don't fish with that stuff at all anymore. Like, maybe some Scandinavian countries might still use some of that stuff, and Britain and stuff like that. But here, particularly in Newfoundland, you want small and sparse. Like, I'm talking like, for instance, like a Tiemco 799 hook, like a number 10 in July. So, and sometimes you might even tie short on that for low water style. You're getting down there with some pretty skinny flies, like, half a dozen strands of moose hair in the wing, a little bit of crystal flash, and that's right. Like, you don't need much to catch summer salmon in Newfoundland. And then once the water warms up, man, you're onto the dry flies, like small buck bugs, bombers. Bombers are probably the number one go-to fly for Atlantic salmon in this area.
Yeah.
And when they start taking them off the top, man, that's when things start to get alive.
Yeah, topwater salmon is definitely a thing. I've only had a coho a few times where it successfully worked out, but boy, was that a rush.
Oh yeah. No, it's wild. And Atlantic salmon, I mean, in my opinion, I'm kind of biased because I'm what I would consider myself a salmon junkie. I don't think there's anything else out there like it. I mean, you hook a fish on a dry fly, you watch him come right from the bottom of crystal clear water, comes up, takes a textbook, takes it back down, you set the hook, he does his thing, and right out of the water he comes, tail walks and all, like, the head shakes and the big runs. So you're getting the dry fly take, which, you can get with trout, you can get topwater with predator fish and stuff like that. None of the predator fish except for smallmouth jump. You know what I mean? I've never really seen. I mean, I know pickerel jump chain pickerel and pike and stuff like that. But I mean, there's nothing like an Atlantic salmon. And then you get that head rushing, where they're shaking their head and trying to throw that fly. That's giving you like the saltwater aspect of how strong he is. And then when he takes that run and bursts down through the pool, then it's like a bonefish then, right? So you're getting everything all in one. Like, I fish tarpon. I mean, I've fished all kinds of saltwater species in a few different places. And tarpon's, I mean, the closest thing that gets my adrenaline going to Atlantic salmon. I mean, hooking tarpon and having something like 25, 50, 100 pounds come out of the water. Like, he took it right at the boat. Now he's three feet above me, and I'm standing in a boat, right? This thing's got its gills spread out. And, I mean, that's a rush. I don't know if you've hooked tarpon or not, or pursued them, but I mean, it's a rush. So I mean, yeah, you got to do that, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a solid bucket list of species that I need to. Atlantic salmon's on there as well.
Come on up anytime.
Yeah, well, appreciate that. What's the average size that you're kind of getting into? Obviously, there's variance, but
yeah, so the way salmon runs generally work is you'll get your big hens come in the rivers first. So in the rivers in Newfoundland, we'll talk Newfoundland first. In the rivers in Newfoundland, you're predominantly looking at 8 to 14, 15 pound fish with your hens, and then the next stage of the run would be your grilse, which a grilse is basically a 4-year-old salmon, basically, that went to the ocean for only one winter and came back to spawn the next spring. So that would generally run about 3.5 to 5 pounds. And those are obviously there's a lot more of those. So, I mean, that's the majority of the fish that you're going to hook is the 3.5 to 5 pound range. And then, I mean, there's several places that hold fish that are over 10 pounds consistently. Just they're obviously the harder ones to catch. They're usually a little bit smarter.
yeah, they've been around the block. And what's for your program, like for your guiding situation? What do you usually set up people, like single hand, spay?
Majority of what I recommend most guys bring would be like a 6 to an 8 weight 9-foot single-handed rod. And then there's opportunities in some of the rivers and some of the pools that we fish to swing big water. Mm-hmm. So, bring that, 12.5 foot, I'm going to say 12.5 foot 6-weight switch, something like that. Okay. That'd be an ideal 2-handed rod.
Yeah. And what's your kind of fancy? What's something you just love doing? You like the spay?
I love actually single-handed spay.
Yeah,
that's that's something I only got onto in like the last 5 years, really.
Yeah.
Really wish I had known that 25 years ago, but
yeah,
total game changer.
Yeah, it's I like single hand spay. I always bring my 2-handed and my single hand when I'm out fishing. I predominantly work with the 2-handed, but there's still scenarios where it's a little tighter or something, and then the single hand gets busted out. But yeah,
here in the fall in Nova Scotia, you're not dry fly fishing, so it's all pretty well swing, and you're swinging flies such as like a GP, general practitioner, marabou flies that are similar to like intruder style kind of flies that you would use for steelhead. So, you're on a sinking tip for the most part, and, you're casting out and swinging. So in the fall, I gravitate to the 2-handed rod just because it's cold. It's, you're more lethargic and stuff like that. So the least amount of effort that you have to put into casting, and let's face it, casting sink tips is much easier to do with a 2-handed rod. So I definitely fish in Nova Scotia in the fall. I would say 95% fish 2-handed.
Yeah. That's no, I know what you mean. It's definitely when you're single hand spay and you're like trying to go up like bug size or something, or more weight on the sink tip, it starts to play out throughout the day. I mean, even with ended rod, by the last hour of the day, your casts are starting to kind of come down in quality. And
100%, man. And I got a really bad shoulder. Well, I got two that aren't really great, just worn out over the years. Just commercial lobster fished and commercial halibut fished, and it's a bajillion casts with a single-handed rod. And, I mean, shotgun shooting and everything. So my shoulders, like everybody, they get worn out. And man, I tell you, it's almost effortless with the 2-handed rod. Again, I wish I had got onto that a lot sooner in life too. But this whole area here on the east coast of Canada, and it's just our rivers aren't set up for big casts for the most part. Like most of our rivers, yes, there's big rivers like the Humber River and the Margaree in Nova Scotia and places like that. But I don't know, like in my experiences in 25 years of guiding and guiding people that really know how to fish with a two-handed rod, it's pretty darn hard to effectively fish a dry fly, in my opinion, with a two-handed rod. So with the majority of our summer fishing being dry fly fishing, the single-handed rod is definitely an asset over two-handed rod. So that's just my opinion. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that, you know, could probably drop a dry fly right on a dime with a two-handed rod every time. But my experience is most guys can't effectively cover a pool the efficient way that you can with a single-handed rod. So
yeah, that's something I'm going to be getting into this year is trout spay. I keep saying that every year, so maybe this one is the real year that'll happen. But I was literally pondering that like 2 days ago, where I was like, damn, like I can, you know, aim where I'm going with a two-handed rod for sure, but I'm not like hitting, you know, like you said, a dime
accuracy. Yeah.
accuracy. So
consistency is my issue. Like, I'll be going down through a sand pool with a two-handed rod, and by no stretch of the imagination would I even say I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best two-handed caster. I'm somewhere between 1 and 2, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
I just don't have a lot of casts in my arsenal and stuff like that. I kind of stick to the ones that I know and stuff like that. But it's I like it, but my problem is I'll be going down through a pool. I'll have 8 absolutely perfect casts, and then the next 8, I'm looking around to make sure nobody's watching me. Like, it's like I got absolutely no consistency with the two-handed rod, and that's just sheerly from, I would say, mostly lack of early education. I probably created some bad habits already, and which is fine. I still get to fly out and I still enjoy it. The biggest thing about fishing, man, is just enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I'm pretty darn accurate with a single-handed rod. Like, I'll pretty well put the dry fly where it's got to go just about every time, unless a big gust of wind comes up the river, which
happens.
Hey, man, we're fly fishermen. We love wind, don't we?
Yeah,
it's our best friend.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things that, you know, spay casting, well, in casting in general, you know, people don't realize how important it is right off the bat. They're kind of like, oh, well, I just need to get the fly in the water. So those bad habits can form pretty quickly. And then, oh, I need to learn how to cast better. Then you go into like getting lessons and stuff. But now you're, you know, stuck on this, you know, I've seen it a lot where it's just like slight little misguided information or, you know, thought process. Even me this year with spay, through talking with people that, you know, are spay fanatics, just hearing and like watching videos of some of these, like, let's call them elite casters, my timing's gone so much better. So like now I'm more on the side of, you know, out of 10 casts, solid 5 of them are just mint, and then 2 of them are and then 3 of them are like what just happened, looking around like, you sure no one's watching, you know?
I'm usually looking around to see where my fly is because I got line all wrapped around me.
Yeah, exactly. But I rarely, like, even, you know, that old saying where it's like you need to have your fly in the water to catch fish. As long as my fly gets in the water, whether I get a knot in my line and I have to untangle it and then half my swing's done, I might not move down the river or, you know, keep working. I might do that cast again, but I still fish it like it's the best cast in the world. So I'm sure you've done it where you've just, you know, botched a cast and next, you know, you got a fish rising to it, or you got, you know.
Well, here's what I tell everybody. And I developed this very early on in life. I figured it like, okay, this just makes sense. If you're going down through a pool and I was back there 10 feet and I'm fishing. I just fished that water that we'll say is 30 feet out in front of me. So I'm still trying to fish 30 feet of distance after I've just walked down 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
If you botch a cast and you strip in 10 feet to get all that mess out of the water, you're just fishing the same water that was good enough for you to fish 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
There still could be a fish there.
Yeah.
Fish doesn't always take a fly. Well, salmon, they certainly don't always take a fly the first time it goes over them.
Yeah.
So just don't. My biggest pet peeve is when guys make a bad cast, they rip it right back out and cast again.
Yeah. And that's more.
Strip all that line, that slack line out, and just let it swing out of the strike zone.
Yeah.
And make your cast again. I've hooked a lot of fish on a botched cast that I've just fixed. You know what I mean? And fish it out, like you said.
Yeah. I've noticed it's like, especially with people that don't fish rivers often, when they get on my raft and we're going down the river, they'll cast out and they'll hit the water and I'll be like, okay, leave it. And they'll already be ripping it off because in their mind they could get another 5 feet out. And it's like, oh, you gotta avoid that. Like, whether it's a dry fly or a streamer or a nymph or whatever, it's like,
it doesn't matter the fly, it's the line, and like they see everything, man. I mean, these fish, all their danger for the most part comes from above.
Yeah.
So they're always looking up to make sure, you know what I mean? So now all of a sudden something just landed there. Well, yeah, a lot of things can land. A stick falls off and lands in, you know what I mean? But the stick doesn't make a big slosh when it comes back up over the water because it doesn't come back up out of the water. It sinks and just drifts past the fish, right?
Yeah. Always let it drift past. It's a discipline though. You learn that over time. You
100%.
Fish, you're watching them and you're like, okay, you make a not great cast and you rip it off and you watch them swim away or move downriver or upriver. And then it's like, oh, I just scared them. The landing of the cast, even though it was terrible or whatever, that's fine. But the fact that I ripped it off, especially the bigger fish, the ones that are paying attention and aren't as like worried about their next meal.
Especially like brown trout. Like, I mean, let's face it, they're one of the most skittish fish there are, right? So, I mean, if you probably screwed it up when you botched the cast anyway, but if you pulled it back out of there, you've sealed the deal. He ain't coming, right?
Yeah.
Like a wild brown trout is not going to come for your fly after that.
No, they, brown trout, you bastards. No. I've definitely.
That's kind of my opinion on all trout. I'm not a trout guy at all. Like,
no,
I've guided in two of the best places definitely in North America for wild trophy brook trout. I couldn't wait to get out of there, man. It's not my thing. Like, I'm salmon. And then here in Nova Scotia, we got an unbelievable spring run of big striped bass.
Yeah.
And like all the money that the New England, Eastern Seaboard of the United States, like all the money that they're putting into their stripers is awesome because we're benefiting from it up here too. I mean, we've got pretty good restrictions on them here to maintain what we have, in trying to coincide with what they're doing on the Eastern Seaboard, with slot limits and retention limits and stuff like that. But man, we got some serious striped bass here, and that's, I love fishing those. Like, they're so big, they hit hard, they fight hard. They're just a solid fish from the time you hook them to the time you release them, like the whole bit. So I really enjoy those. And in that same river, it also holds wild brown trout. And sometimes you'll catch them, and like, I'll catch a trout and it'll be, 16, 18-inch brown trout. Like, most people would love to catch that. I'm catching on like a great big ugly striper fly. And then all of a sudden I'll hook this trout, or my client will hook the trout or whatever, and we'll get it in. I'm just like, it's like my client will have, oh man, that's so nice. Can I get a picture? I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll get a picture. And I'm taking the picture. And I'm like, okay, put it back. Let's catch a big fish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, I've never done striped bass. So let's say I was coming out for striped bass. What's the season? what gear should I bring and what should I kind of expect for like finding them in the river? Are there in the rivers at that point, right?
Yeah, it's a tidal brackish river. So I target the tide flow each day. That's what I pretty well try to target. We can wade, which I do from time to time in certain spots, but predominantly I'll run a 14-foot flat bottom john boat.
Okay.
And put the boat in high tide, and then we run all the way up the river, and then we find where the fish are, like the big schools of fish, and then we just follow them down the river as the tides fall, and we just fish for the next 5-6 hours till we get back to basically where we started, and then yeah, so that's right here in central Nova Scotia. So it's like 20 minutes from the Halifax Stanfield International Airport. Has flights coming from all over the world, sometimes certain places, but certainly direct flights from major hubs like Newark, Toronto, Calgary, places like that. So guys will fly in. I'll pick them up at the airport. We'll have accommodations arranged for them before they get here and stuff like that. I'll pick them up at the airport, get them all settled in, and then depending on what time they fly in and what time the tides are, we may fish that day, or the next day we'll saddle up, get in the boat, and run up the river, find where the fish are. And I have client rods there, so people don't have to bring rods if they don't want to. Set up for fly fishing. Some guys do spin fish, but I'm set up predominantly for fly fishing gear for guys to have. And we're using saltwater lines, so I'm actually using tarpon lines.
Okay.
I personally haven't found a striper line yet that I like. So I'm using tarpon lines, and I've got 9-foot, 10 weight saltwater predator rods. So
wow,
they're yeah. And even some days we're hooking fish that I really wish I had a 12.
Okay.
Yeah, like these things are tanks. Like when you hook them, they just want to go right to bottom, and they get to bottom, then they realize, okay, I'm only in a river, I'm not in the ocean anymore. So then they're screaming down river, like pull anchor and chase them someday. Like, so these are like, we're getting fish up here like 15, 20 pound right out of the salt water, still feeding, and they're just screaming fish, angry. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty epic. I mean, I guess, do people find it pretty hard to like be tossing a 10 weight rod all day long, or?
No, because you don't really have to cast far. The biggest, because I'm putting you right on the fish in the boat. The water's really muddy. The fish aren't scared of the boat. The best time to be here is they actually shut the river down for retention. No bait, so you're only allowed artificial lure, fly only, catch and release only, and that takes a lot of people off the river. So all the guys that that are fishing for sustenance because they like to fish, or the guys that are fishing with bait because that's what they like to do. They like to sit in their chair, cast out with the bait. It's great camaraderie for people that like to do that. But those people are gone off the river from May 10th to June 10th. So we got a month there that is it's spawning. So that's why they're not allowed to use the bait or more than just a single hook. So the fish are spawning then. And it's crazy, man. Like, there's a lot of fish. Like last year, they started to roll. It was the long weekend in May here. We call it rolling because they come. I don't know if you ever seen how stripers spawn, but the female will come up on the surface and she'll just start to roll on the surface, and then the males will come up and roll over the top of her. So you're sitting there. Yeah, you're sitting there. You take your paddle. You stick your paddle in the water, you just start going back and forth like this in the water. And then you'll have like 10-pound stripers, like the males will come up and start hitting your paddle. And it's crazy. It's nuts. Like thinking it's a female. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So the best time, in my opinion, to come up would be from 1st of May until about, the fishing's still really good, the 15th of June, but the river's starting to get busier again because you're allowed to fish with the bait and stuff like that. So I fish from the 1st of May, and guide from the 1st of May until the 15th of June, and then from the 15th of June, I'm gone to Newfoundland after that for Atlantic salmon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as fly selection for the stripers, these are big streamers. Just
Yeah, I'm mostly throwing like big EP flies, like peanut butter, not the E. I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know if you know. Peanut butter is like an EP fly, black on the top, purple on the bottom.
Okay.
2 red eyes.
I haven't seen that one, but
yeah, it's just
butter.
It's a tarpon pattern.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like lefty deceivers, all that kind of stuff. Now, with my experience with the deceivers, you'll catch a lot more fish, but you'll catch a lot more of the schoolies. Another fly that I really like to fish a lot, especially when the big fish are really starting to feed good as the water temperature gets up. I'll use like articulated, and to be 10, 11 inches long, multiple sections, similar to like the Game Changer.
Yeah.
So it'll have all the segments, but it'll look like a big eel. Be bigger on the front, and then it tapers out just to, craft fur coming off the back. And it looks basically just like a big, long clump of hair. But when you put it in the water, oh, man.
It just comes alive.
It just comes alive, and it just looks like an eel, like an eel that's like 10, 11 inches long. And the small fit, like I never catch schoolies on it, but you'll always catch the big fish. So for me, when I go out, I'm not interested in catching schoolies. It's great fun, but I'm out there basically to target big fish. And when you throw that out, let that sink down, and when you start to strip it back, in my head, because that's pretty much predominantly what I've saw, when I'm stripping that back, if I feel a tug on the other end, I know it's a good.
Yeah.
So that makes it all the more fun too, right? Sometimes it's a really dirty river. When I say that, I mean like a lot of deadheads in it from the tide washing in and out and stuff like that. It's Bay of Fundy, so it's the highest tides in the world. Like we get, 28-foot difference in tide from low tide to high tide. Yeah,
wow,
crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. The only other place I've seen tides like that is on Ongava Bay up in northern Canada. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. In the river itself, it fluctuates on average daily about 14 feet from high tide to low tide.
Wow.
We actually get a tidal bore, so when the tide changes and comes in the river, the current in the river will be going out towards the ocean. When the tide turns and comes in, we'll have like a tsunami wave that comes up the river. You can see it rolling, coming up the river. And then when that goes by, the current's going the opposite direction because the tide is faster than the current coming out. So it flows over the top of the freshwater. And you'll just have this rogue wave going up the river. And it's like, holy crap, where'd that come from?
So you're watching, you visually can see it happen. You're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, especially in the really narrow spots in the river, and the closer you are to the bay itself, the more predominant that would be, because you got a lot more speed coming in and whatever, right?
Crazy. And then as far as you said that the striped bass, they swim to the bottom and then realize that they're kind of in a river and not in the ocean. Do they do a lot of aerial, or are they just
no aerial? I personally have never seen a striper come out of the water being hooked. All I've seen, they'll come up on top of the surface, like as they're going down river, like they're screaming offline, and then next thing you know, there'll be this big slosh and swirl as he's going down. Like generally, what that is he'll get to a shallower spot in the river, and his belly hit it or whatever, and he's just freaking out and exploding. But they're seriously fun fish to catch on fly, man. They're like 90% of the people that fish for striped bass around here are all fishing with gear. And I mean, I got nothing against people that fish with gear, but anybody that fishes with a fly rod and gear, they should really try fishing stripers with a fly rod, because it's absolutely insane. Like even open water, like I do some guiding in some open water here for striped bass too, or even from like there's spots here where you can get out onto like rock encroachments, and you get the surf coming in and stuff like that, and you can stand there and you can see the striped bass swimming because the water's so clear in the ocean here. They'll be swimming. You can just see like 3 or 4 stripers in like the wave as it's rolling in, and you just cast out to them, let it sit, and strip.
Yeah.
It's fun, man. I really enjoy it.
I'm going to assume that we're not trout setting. We're
nope. You strip set.
Strip setting.
Yeah. Same as pretty well all saltwater fish. And the reason for that is when you're stripping and your flies coming towards you, we'll say going away from the fish. When a striper is following it and he eats a salmon and a trout, they'll take the fly and they turn. Hence the reason why you get them in the corner of the mouth. With most saltwater fish, when they hit, they continue swimming forward. So that's why you're stripping, and then he eats it. You feel him, and then you strip set, and then generally you pinch your line against your cork.
Yeah.
And then you pull back with the rod too. So you're doing like a strip and then a wham.
Yeah. So you're getting like quite a bit of distance acquired in between.
Because those stripers, because they're still swimming towards you. So that first strip set, that might be just enough to take up the slack that he's created by picking up the fly and continuing to move forward. So you got to strip, and you got to, at some point, you got to make sure that one of these is solid.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of hookups come off like really quick with a lot of saltwater fish. Tarpon being the worst, the top of their mouth is just, it's as hard as a rock for crushing crabs. That's what their mouth is so hard for on the top.
Yeah.
So if your fly happens to be anywhere up there, your chances of even getting the hook into them are slim to none. But their jaw bones, and stripers the same thing, like their jaw bones, and there's so much bone there, and it's so big that if you don't either get under it, you got to get into it. Like it's just a nature of the beast, right? It's just adds to the ambiance of how hard they are to catch.
Yeah. So, and then like if you stripped and then you pinch the cork or the line on the cork and then you pull back and you don't feel that it was good enough, it's quickly strip again and do it again, give it a couple, really try to drive that hook in. And then
generally you'll get it on the second one, like because usually you're stripping, and so there's no slack in your line anyway. So it's just that all of a sudden you feel that bump say for instance he hits it halfway through the strip.
Yeah.
Then you only got like 6 inches and most lines have a little bit of stretch in them, unless you have like the new core lines that they have out and stuff like that, which there's a time and place for them, but it's just jam that hook in. So if you're only halfway back and you're stripping, and again you want to hold, for anybody that's not familiar with saltwater fishing, you want to hold your rod out as far as you can in front of you, and then you're stripping like this, which gives you the leverage that if you're stripping and your arm's out like this as you're stripping, and then he takes it, then you have that room to come back. Whereas if you got your rod right beside you like this and you're stripping beside you, then you go to do that, pull your rod back, like especially if you got a bad shoulder like mine, you're only getting about 4 inches of travel coming back, right? So
okay, so you would kind of like, just reiterating, but you'd have your rod more so in front of you. So once you're stripping and you feel full tension, you got like a couple of feet to go back versus having the rod next to you and only getting. Yeah.
Yeah, anybody that's fished tarpon would or bonefish, the strip set is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And for us salmon and trout anglers, it's extremely hard to retrain your muscle memory. Like, man, I cut my teeth on bonefish in Cuba. I fish down there a lot now, but when I first started going down there, the guides down there, obviously, a bit of a language barrier. So they didn't always understand what I was saying, and I didn't understand what they were saying. But I understood that I had to get onto this strip set. And man, I burnt a lot of bonefish before I got onto that. And you learn in a hurry, and your guide's standing behind you, and he's saying a whole bunch of things. You don't know what he's saying, but none of it's good, and you're not really sure whether or not you're actually going to make it back to the marina because he's so mad. Because these guys, I mean, just like all guides, they take pride in their clients hooking fish, but for them, it's insane. Like, it's highly competitive down there between guides, and that's been my experience most places with saltwater fish. Like, for guys like us, we take people out, and it's, for instance, a lot of the Atlantic salmon fishing is limited to how many fish you can actually catch and release per day in a lot of different areas. So, I mean, you're bragging about the big fish, right? When you come back to camp, you're like, oh, my client caught a 14-pounder today, and silver bullet covered in sea lice, tail walked 4 times. Like, you're just telling this whole story, right? In the saltwater side of things, when the guides get together, how many fish do you get today? Oh, we hooked 26. Is that all? We got 32.
Yeah.
So, and they count fish landed to the boat. So if your client's not
on it,
the guy got no story when he goes back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before, where it's like, I guess it is a pride thing, and like, they want to see you catch it. So like, if you're, brand new to fly fishing and you're spending, $5 or whatever grand to go fish for bonefish or tarpon, and you can't make a cast, they're like sitting there like, what is going on? But,
well, you could imagine how long of a day it would be. Like, and I've been in this situation myself, and it is what it is. You help people as much as you can, but over the years, I've guided a lot of like prestige lodges and stuff like that, where you had like a lot of high-end corporate guests coming in. So it'd be like a corporation bringing 8 or 10 people in to fish for a week, and half of them people may not have ever even fished at all before in their life.
Yeah.
They're showing up with a new pair of waders and a new fishing jacket, a new rod, new reel. And I mean, you can tell, like, when they're getting out of the float plane or whatever, like, okay, that guy's new, because all his clothes still have the wrinkles in it from where it was folded in the packaging, right? And I mean, hey, man, everybody deserves an opportunity to try to fish. I don't want to try to disrespect that, but think about this guy showing up at a place where it's $8,000 American to fish for a week.
Yeah,
he has no idea how to cast.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in for the type of week that he might think that he's in for. Like,
yeah,
and I feel bad for those guys. Like, I can only give you so much instruction on casting. Then after that instruction comes to practice. Well, you're here for $8,000 a week, and you're practicing and paying $8,000. You really should have been onto this 6 months ago or a year ago when you knew that you were coming on this trip. Found somebody local,
mm-hmm.
and went out for a couple lessons, and then you can just practice in your yard.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you have enough grass, or you can go to a local park or something. But practice is something that, like, you never want to go on a fly fishing trip without any experience fly fishing. I mean, it's just going to hinder your week, and everybody around you might be catching fish. Like, those couple casting, those couple casting lessons. I mean, it's going to be highly beneficial to you.
Yeah.
So in saying that, like I said, we had, I've had guys show up that had absolutely no experience casting. And the one nice thing about Newfoundland with Atlantic salmon and the rivers there, it might not be exactly the best spot, but there's places there where I can take guys that, if you can cast 25 feet,
mm-hmm.
and you can hit that spot on that angle and just let it swing, and then take a step every couple minutes and go down through the pool, pretty good chance you'll hook a fish. Because, I mean, Newfoundland, there's a lot of fish there. And I'm on, I should say a lot of fish. It's 66% of North America's salmon rivers are in Newfoundland and Labrador. So there's a lot of fish there, right? So you should be able to find a few. I target 7 different rivers within 45 minutes of my base. So, there's always a place there that we can usually always find fish. might not be a perfect day, like, north wind. Dude, man, I'd rather just stay in bed on a north wind. Like, I've had almost never any good luck on a north wind salmon fishing. It's no good for striper fishing either. I don't really know much. Yeah, it just changes, like it changes the fish for sure. Like, without a question, in most of the rivers that I fish in Newfoundland, if you got a southwest wind, I believe that the wind has a lot to do with how fish react, and animals too, but animals more so wind direction and how they're going to travel through a certain area because of that wind direction.
Yeah,
they're still going to get up and feed. Like whitetail get up and feed usually 5 times a day. So I mean, that's just the wind's just going to dictate which direction they travel, or whether they're traveling on a ridge or whatever. But with salmon, and I don't know, most fish that I fished actually, like even down in Cuba, like a north wind comes in down there, a north front, you're usually going to have cloud, which is kind of a hindrance for you for saltwater fishing anyway, simply for spotting fish. But it's yeah, man, everything just locks down. Like stripers, like if you get a rain here, like in the spring, like the water temperature's just starting to come up, and the fish are just starting to get active, and everything's starting to come to life. And then all of a sudden you get like a cold May rain, like northeast rain, and first part of May or something like that. And we'll say you get like 25 millimeters, which is almost an inch for our American friends. That's going to shut the fishing down for probably about 2 days. Like it's almost like the fish just go right back out to the ocean because the water's warm out there, and then they come back in again. Like it's yeah, I mean they're going to come back in. They're there for basically 2 months. I mean, they're going to come back in, but on a big rain, and if it's cold, like a north wind, you might lose your fish for a day or two.
Yeah,
before they'll come back in the river, or before they start to surface and get active again. Most fish are susceptible to cold fronts.
Yeah, I mean, we notice it out here. Touching on like, if you end up getting a guide and you're new to it, I was just thinking about that. That I definitely love when I have a client for 2 days if they're new, because that first day, especially if it's like our trout river isn't like the main one that I guide on isn't super long, so like the density of trout, especially rainbows, is up higher. So as you work down, you're starting to see a little bit less and less kind of thing, or, they're just a little more space in between them. So by the end of the day, everyone's like getting good at what they're doing. And then it's the end of the day. And you're like, all right, so having that 2 days I love when I have a client that's new to fly fishing for 2 days, because I'm like, okay, day one, we're going to focus on technique and like understanding what we're doing and why we do it this way. And then the next day, but touching on the wind as well, I've definitely noticed there's, certain winds that, yeah, they, I don't necessarily pay as much attention because I'm still, young and new and learning, but there are times where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a cold wind right now, and then we're not catching. So yeah, fish just hunker down. I call it like happy fish or unhappy fish. And
where exactly are you located?
I'm on Vancouver Island.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we're like,
I know you're in BC, but I wasn't sure whereabouts.
Yeah, so I'm on the island. We got, great salmon fishery, steelhead, and all that. And then there is definitely some ocean fishing to be had. We can fish basically 12 months out of the year. You just got to know what you're going for. Salmon come in, spawned, then it's trout with eggs and stuff like that. And then steelhead will start to come in. And so there's always something happening. You just need to know where and what to fish for. But timing, as any fishery, is the key. Wait for some rain, and then the day after or 2 days after, depending on
it starts to clear.
When it starts to clear, or yeah. So like I've been doing steelheading for the last 3 trips that I've gone out. Pretty much a Saturday warrior right now. And no fish, but still love being out. Like I take more pride on my casting when I'm out, and I try to not think of the fish and just like try to get the good drifts going and the proper swim.
Yeah, well, the thing is when you got a day where you're going out and you're not really expecting to have great fishing. If you know that you're going out, those are the days there where like you just said, really focus on your casting. So okay, so we're going to make this a practice session with hopefully the opportunity of a fish taking my fly.
Yeah.
So when you go on a trip or your river comes into season, or you're traveling to a river that in your area that okay, now it's game time, it's steelhead, like they're in, right? You just spent like the last 5 sessions really focusing on your practicing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be on your game.
Yeah,
a lot better than what you were had you for the last 5 or 6 times concentrated on catching a fish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and it's interesting because like, steelhead out here, they're far in between. They're not necessarily the hardest fish to make grab from my understanding of what people say, but it's locating them, right?
Mm-hmm.
One run, there might be only a handful. And did they get hooked that day? Did they, is it cold? Is it, what's going on? Do you have a small fly or a big fly? Like these things, all play into it. So there's definitely times where, like last year, I hooked into 6 and landed 0. And they were all off within 5 seconds.
Oh,
and it was rough. It was a rough pill to swallow. And then this year, my goal is just catching 1. So it's like, it's a tough fishery. If I'm taking people out trout fishing, then I can't, you can never guarantee fish, but like in my mind, I'm like, I know we're going to get something. And if it's a good season or like, it's warm and everything's going good, like we're going to see some fish almost 100%. But then when we get into like salmon, once again, like I could be like, yeah, we're going to see something in my mind, at least. But then, yeah, steelhead, it's like, I'm probably not going to guide for steelhead for, multiple years on my river, just because I'm still learning. Like it takes so much time and effort, and really depends on how many times do you get out. If you get out twice a year, like probably not going to get a steelhead. Maybe with a guide, especially if you're willing to do like center pin or something like that, or, gear fishing.
Center pin.
Have you heard of that?
Are guys still doing that?
Oh yeah, out here it's a big thing.
I thought center pinning went out when Justin Bieber went off the top of the charts.
Yeah, no, center pin is a really big thing out here.
Yeah, I know. That's fly fishermen like to chuck shit at the center pinners, right?
Oh yeah.
We don't have any, like I don't even know what fishery we would even have here that would entertain center pinning. So nobody here center pins, right? So it's not an issue here. But I hear like all these guys coming from the West Coast or even Ontario and certainly Michigan and places like that I've talked to, and it's a love-hate relationship between them guys, man.
Oh yeah, and we see it out here too. I used to be a little more stale about it, but of course,
hey man, let them fish. We're all there to fish, man.
That's the thing, the more I like got into it, like I like Euro nymphing. I don't do it. Like my heart's more set on spay fishing these days than doing the Euro thing, but there's a time and a place for it. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I'm out on the water. I'm wanting to fish. Like,
yeah,
I choose one technique over the other, but I'm smiling. Like, who's to say?
That's right.
But yeah, so, the one thing though is if you do both, like if you're doing fly fishing and gear fishing, your brain is learning quite a bit. You're fishing multiple different waters that you can't always swing certain waters.
Right.
You learn where fish lie. You take in a lot of information. So that's one thing that I like accepted. And I'm like, I've seen it too a lot with like, kind of in the history books of fly fishing and stuff, people that do gear and fly fishing, they come up with some crazy shit.
Oh yeah.
They're like, oh, why don't I, back in the day, the pink worm for steelhead and stuff. And now people tie like long pink flies and get steelhead on it because they're like,
Yeah.
I do this on here, it should work on this. And then, so yeah, there's definitely something to be said.
Adapt and overcome.
Exactly. And I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, if you're out there to fish and you're enjoying yourself, then that's all that counts. There's enough discrimination in this world. Just let
Oh man. Yeah. Just let the center pinners fish.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a pretty cool fishery out here. Definitely like anything, stripers learning the strip set or timing and knowing all these little details. If you don't have anyone to show you, it's just I've had multiple encounters with people who are ready to get rid of their stuff, and I'm like, well, just try this, or like maybe get casting lessons, or and then they improve a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're catching fish, and it's like your knowledge does apply, and the more you have of it, the better your chances are.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Curious, what's the oh wow, I'm just blanking because I decided to think of something smart. Um, yeah, so where do the striped bass travel? What's their wow, I don't even know where my brain's at right now. Migration. There we go. What's their migration pattern? Like, where you said that they were doing like lots of work on the striped bass down in the US, so I'm assuming that they're traveling down to the US, down the coast, and then coming back up to spawn in their different rivers.
I think there might be some that do that, but that's an interesting question because this is a very unique system, what we have here. I don't think a lot of our fish are migrating all the way down. I think what it is their stocking programs and their conservation efforts have really increased their fishery, and the water's warming up. So the stripers are coming further north. So all those fish that were in the New England area that are used to, we'll just say, this is my hypothesis on it. Anyway, we'll just say that certain, what's the word I'm looking for? Subspecies of that local fish is used to a certain water temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Our fish, like we had for years, we've always had striped bass here, but our fish, I don't think they really migrate that far. So I think our fish were used to like our kind of conditions and stuff like that. Now that our oceans are warming up on this side, which I'm sure your guys' are too. I think what it is all those fish are moving north. Like as a commercial lobster fisherman, I noticed over the years, like Maine always had a much, much, much better lobster fishery than what we did. I mean, Maine was known around the world for their lobsters. We now have more lobsters than Maine. And it's not because of our conservation efforts or anything like that, because they both kind of coincide similar, except Maine can fish year round. But it's still conservation, and our efforts are implemented. But I think what it is the striped bass have just moved further north because Labrador and Newfoundland have never ever had striped bass, and they're starting to show up. We actually have a major problem in a world-renowned salmon river in New Brunswick, the Miramichi. There's like 1 million stripers, and I'm not saying that to be exaggerating. Like you can look this up. There's drone footage of it and everything. There's 1 million stripers at the mouth of the Miramichi River every spring. So imagine being a salmon smolt coming out of the river. Virtually almost no predators in the river because there's no smallmouth bass, there's no pike, nothing like that. The only predators would be trout and birds and
Sculpin, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, there's nothing serious. Now all of a sudden they get out and they got to run a gauntlet of 1 million fish that eat probably 100 smolt a day.
Yeah.
Like I mean, these fish are that's eat and reproduce. That's all stripers do. Eat and reproduce. Eat and reproduce. So it's a big problem for them on that particular system. And I don't know what they're going to do to fix that. I don't know if it's going to. I don't know what it's going to do to salmon fishery. But back to the stripers and the migration here. So as I sit here, I'm looking out my front window. On the other side of that woods is a big lake called Grand Lake. And in that lake runs all the way down, called the Shubenacadie River, runs quite a ways through here, and then dumps into the Bay of Fundy. This river turns tidal at the mouth. So it's a big system. It's clear up here. It's muddy down there. The banks are all mud, like you'd be walking in mud like this thick. And that lake, they estimate 10 to 15,000 striped bass winter in that lake every year and treat that lake as an ocean.
Damn.
Then we have the Bay of Fundy, where the majority of the fish are, because they're actually sea-run fish. In the spring, those ones come up, all due to water temperatures, right? The ones in the lake start backing down the river by like schools of 100, 200, and we're talking all these, majority of these fish would be, I'm going to say 5 to 15 pounds. And there's schools of, like, if you go down in a kayak and you're going over the top of them, they're beating the bottom of your kayak. Like, there's so many of them. And they close that section of the river down when the fish are starting to come down because, obvious reasons, you're just going to snag them if you're fishing there. Right? Even fly fishing, you're going to snag them. It's possible. Your fly cannot get to the bottom because it's just your line literally going over dorsal fins the whole way.
Yeah.
So that section of the river gets shut down as those fish are backing down. Those fish meet the Bay of Fundy fish, where there's two rivers here, the Shubenacadie and the Stewiacke. They meet where the two rivers converge, and that's where they'll spawn. And they'll spend like a month and a half, 2 months pretty much in that area as they come down. They're starting to, mingle. Then the water temperature gets good enough to spawn. Then they'll have another spawn. Generally, you'll usually see 2 to 3 decent, good spawning days. And then they'll hang around there, start feeding again. And then in the fall, or actually in the summer, a lot of them go to the Bay of Fundy. But then in the fall, you'll get all them ones that winter into Grand Lake and treat Grand Lake as their ocean. They come back up, and so you can get on them in the fall. Fall fishery is a little bit different. It's harder they only come up one river. They don't come up the other one. So there's the Shubenacadie River and there's the Stewiacke. In the fall, they don't go up to Stewiacke. They just come up to Shuby and they come back up into this lake for their migration. So it's kind of neat. We got 2 completely different migrations right here on this river.
Wow.
Yeah, one migrates to freshwater and one to saltwater.
Yeah. It's really interesting too to go from like New Brunswick having no striped bass to all of a sudden like 1 million on their front door.
1 million on one river.
Yeah, on one river. And that's like
it's crazy.
I really would like to know what they're talking about because obviously Atlantic salmon has always been something that, the East Coast is proud of and wants to keep around. So
yeah,
that's like,
well, we got the on the Marguerite River now, we got striped bass in that river. Well, they don't come right up into the river, but they come up to what we call the seal pool. So from there down, it's pretty easy for them to get into the river. But I mean, they're just sitting there, they're eating trout and salmon as they're going out, right? Mm-hmm. You're literally fishing salmon here, and if you go around the corner, it's kind of like a dead water or like a still water. You go down there, get right into stripers, no trouble. Crazy. They're there all summer. So I mean, if those fish are coming out, they gotta try to get by them. And let's face it, they're predator fish. They're good at what they do, right?
Yeah. As far as like holding water, let's start with striped bass. What's their because obviously when they're traveling, they're moving, blah, 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 but where do they like to sit and relax and like catch a breath and get some oxygen and all that?
They never really seem to stay still. So you'll get them generally on turns, like turns in the river. Mm-hmm. So it's generally deeper on one side. But then you'll get like deep troughs. It's all sandy bottom. Mm-hmm. in this river. There's there is some rock, but it's not the rocky river that you would look at. It's more of a sandy, muddy river at the bottom end. Up here is just like a normal river, like a trout or salmon stream would be, but down in the lower end is completely different. So the fish, as the tide starts to fall, as I said earlier, they'll be further up, closer to the clear water. And then as the tide falls, we start working back down the river. They'll get into spots that are, deep holes and on the turns, and they'll swim around there for a little while. Like, I'm just hypothetically, maybe they'll be there for 15, 20 minutes. We'll see them on the fish finder and we'll be catching them and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it just pull anchor, go down river until you find them again. And then when you find them, drop anchor and start fishing away. So they'll move up and down the river, and they'll settle into pools, and then they kind of just swim around in circles. And if there's bait fish there, like that same time of year in the spring, there's a lot of gas burrow. I don't know if you know what those are, but
No, I don't.
They're like a little bit bigger version of a herring, a little bit smaller version of a shad. Okay. So they're in the herring family. They're bait fish, and they're coming up by the millions. And you could be sitting there, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see like this V on the surface of the water. You'll be like, oh, there's a striper coming up, right? You can see them when they're cruising, like the big guys. They're not very far from the surface when they do start to cruise. And you'll see them coming, and all of a sudden you'll see it disappear. And then right on the shoreline, you'll just see all these fish just starting to explode, like right, because the fish are trying to get away, and then they hit the shore, and then they got to go right or left. And what it is it's the stripers busting them going in and hitting the school of fish. Yeah, it's crazy. But so yeah, they're chasing bait fish around. There's eels in the river. So I mean, they're just feeding machines. So they're always looking for food. I wish they took the fly as good as what they took a live herring or a live gas, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to compete with with something that's actually exactly what they've just ate a million of in the last hour. So
yeah,
but no, they take flies really good. We have days where we can hook like 10 or 15 in a tide, and then you have days where you're struggling to get one, and they're always there. You see them like fish finder with side view. I mean, you can sit there and look at the fish finder. You can see all the fish that are at that side. You can see the school of bait fish over there as you're drifting down the river. They're there. You can see them. Or maybe even you're getting a few bumps, or a couple of guys are catching them here or there or whatever. But they're always there at that time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're there in higher numbers, depending on like the water temperature and stuff like that, or whether you had a big rain, like I mentioned there earlier. They're always there, so you're always fishing over fish, or we're always going to be able to find where the fish are. But some days are banner days, and some days can be complete duds. But on an average day with fly, in a 6-hour tide, 5 to 7 hours, depending on how the tide. Some days you get a bigger tide and you get a little more time that you can fish, and then some days it's not as good of a tide, so we got to get downriver so we can get the boat out, right? So on an average, it's a 6-hour fishing day with the stripers, and a decent caster. He's going to probably put the hook into 2 to 5 fish, on an average day.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you have your days where you can't buy a fish.
Yeah.
And then you have your days where you can't keep them off the end of your line, right?
Yeah. Oh, fishing. That's what keeps us coming back, though. I was like, I have one buddy.
It's not called catching, man. It's called fishing.
Yeah, exactly. He's pretty new to fly fishing, and I took him out, and he got lots of trout, and then he went out by himself, and he only got a few, and he was like, oh man, like must have been a bad day. And I was like, well, you were also on a boat, like moving downriver, and like had a guide telling you where to cast, like things at the time. But and not every day's great, if I have a day off, it's probably not going to be a crazy fishy day.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm working, I'm like, wow, look at what's going on right now. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But
hindsight.
yeah, it's
should have been here yesterday.
Should have been here yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago.
I think next week's going to be the best week.
Yeah.
I think the run will be in next week. And you're like, yeah, well, I'm here this week. I didn't need you to tell me that. Yeah. Let me figure that out. I don't need the bad news told to me.
Oh, man. The amount of times I've gone, like, especially on this island, family and all that. So you get the days you get, and you're like, I look at some of my friends who don't have kids or whatever, and it's like they're waiting for rain and then they get to go. They go up island or something. And me, I'm like, well, I got this weekend and it's blown out. I'm going fishing, I guess. And then I'll stand there with blown out water, like tossing a fly in, hoping for something, So I personally go out when I got time, whether it's going to be a great fishing day or not, because for me, it's like,
You got young kids? You got young kids?
Yeah, I got 2 kids, and then one's 4 and one's 11. So,
you still got a while yet before you're going to have any real freedom.
Yeah, that's okay. He's into fishing. We're shaping him up. And then I'm going to just teach him how to row, so he'll just row me around. I got dreams. It's all good. Yeah.
Hey, you gotta have goals, man.
Yeah, you gotta have goals. Yeah, and
I'm lucky on that aspect. Like I got 2 kids. One's 20. Do the math here. One's 26, and one's going to be 21.
Okay.
And so my youngest is still in business school. She lives at home, but she's looking at moving out. I'm going on an exploratory trip, probably in March, and I'm heading to Honduras.
Oh.
Going down there to explore because my wife and I are looking at this time next year, actually 11 months from now, we're looking at pulling the pin, selling everything that we have here, and I'll come back to guide in the spring and summer. But we're looking at like Honduras all winter, man.
Yeah. Peace out, Canada.
Honduras. Well, just peace out winter. I just
peace out winter. Yeah.
Yeah. But you guys don't even really get winter there on Vancouver Island. You get a little bit of rain.
The same. No, we get This year it hasn't snowed by my house. Last year we had like 3 feet. The year before we had like 4 or 5 feet. It's been a weird winter. Like December.
I didn't even think Vancouver got that much snow.
Yeah, well, it all depends. Like down in like Victoria, the capital, at the bottom of the island, like you're not looking at a ton of snow. There's obviously been years, as everything, but for a bit there, we were starting to get like a lot of snow. But this year it snowed up by my river, which is about an hour up drive up island. It snowed once. It hasn't snowed at my house, and I'm like, January, February, I wonder what that's going to look like. It seems like the seasons have pushed a month. Fish have been coming in a month later or like 3 weeks later. The rainy season, it did happen and like things got really high, but now it's like not raining a crazy amount. It hasn't been snowing. So it's been interesting seeing the changes. Like it was very consistent for 5 years of when I first got into fly fishing. Like October time, like you could start seeing blown out rivers more consistently. But this year it's like blown out for a handful of days, and then it's maybe more than a handful of days. Let's say a couple of times or something. But then it's just been like pretty consistent. Like I was out yesterday. Once again, sorry, because I was supposed to be recording with you, but I guess I don't even, anyways, fish brain, that's what it is. I'll chalk it up to that, but,
I'll take that as an excuse. That's totally
one, usually it's not me that forgets. It's usually someone that was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Conditions were good. I went fishing. And I'm like, no worries. try to lock down a fisherman. You're battling seas
Well, to be fair, to let the viewers know, not only did you botch, I kind of botched too, because like a week ago we were actually supposed to do this on Boxing Day, but we had a power outage here,
Yeah.
and it was like, obviously I couldn't let you know we had a power outage because I had no way of communicating. We had no internet or anything. So then all of a sudden everything comes back on. There's like messages coming in from Andrew, and I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got to message him right away. Let him know, like, sorry, but.
No, and I mean, I used to get, like, when I first started the podcast, I'd get so stressed. And it would be like a big deal in my mind. But now at this point, I'm like, yeah. I took this is going to be the first episode in like almost a month and a bit. I didn't plan on taking such a long break. But I got to episode, so I always I've been setting the last few years, I've been setting goals for myself, whether it's in fishing or, financial or whatnot, to kind of guide me towards where I want to go. So originally it was get to episode 50, and then it was get to episode 100. But when I got to episode 100, I was like, oh shit, I didn't really like set my next goals. And then I was going on my honeymoon in Mexico. And then it was my son's birthday, and then it was Christmas, then New Year's, and I was like, there's just so, like, I had my mom staying in this room here. This is my fly tying and fishing room now. So, I just kind of was like, instead of stressing about it, I was like, and the podcast is still doing good in terms of, it's getting more than half of the normal downloads. So like people are still listening, which is great.
Yep.
I just kind of took time off of social media a little bit, and like it takes a lot of work.
It does. I started a podcast during COVID, and it's called the Guide Shack Chronicles, and man, it was doing good. I had I had all kinds of like big names and stuff like that. Things were it was rolling real good, and then my season came along. I had some podcasts already, set aside in the vault there to pull out during that time, which I did. But during that time, I didn't get any more recorded. It's gone to the back burner for a little while right now, because I got a couple other irons in the fire. One of them is like on my website. I have obviously all my guiding and my services that I do.
Yeah.
But I have a booking agent side of that, and right now my goal, and I've been working on it a lot in the last week, but my goal for 2024 is to build that with really good, reputable outfitters and guides, and that I can work with. And over the years, I've got a pretty good list of clients that I've guided, and guys that I've met in camp that I stay in touch with and stuff like that. Good email base on my website. So if anybody's listening, you got an outfitter, shoot me a message, and maybe we could work together. But yeah, I'm looking at growing that side of it. I love talking to people about hunting and fishing.
Yeah,
I've been to numerous places, so I know the different types of fishing and the fisheries and stuff like that. So I want to try to help people build their trip, and just because I like doing that stuff. Like somebody tells me, oh, I want to go on I want to fish for permit. I shouldn't have picked that one.
yeah. That's good luck.
You went your steelhead. You were saying you went 6-0 for landing.
Yeah.
I haven't landed a permit yet, but I could sit here and tell you some horror stories about permit. 90% of it was all my fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, I haven't landed one yet. And I had a screamer on in Cuba. It was just like this Hail Mary trip there a few years back. And when I go to these places, I generally I don't stay on resorts like the all inclusive stuff. So I like staying in town, seeing the culture wherever I go. And so anyway, it just happened to we were doing something else that day, and it fell through. So decided last minute, okay, well, let's just go fishing. And so I called up my buddy that was a guide, and I said, listen, man, we're come pick you up. We're going to go fishing if you're available." He said, "Yeah, man, come on, let's go." He said, "It's a little bit late in the day, but that's okay. We'll go." When I say late in the day, it was like, I called him at like 7:30 in the morning. We still had like an hour to get to where we were going to go, but we weren't taking no boat. It was just a waiting trip, right? All of a sudden, we get in the car and we get out there, and he brings me to this like lagoon, right? And it's like there's no water at all. Like I don't see any water anywhere, and it's just all mud. So we start walking through this like dark gray, almost black clay mud that's about like 2 inches thick. There's like wild boar tracks everywhere. And I'm like, "Dude, where's the water?" He says, you come, you follow me." So we come out, all of a sudden we come to this perfectly round lagoon. You can see the ocean now, like where it gets out to the ocean. And as soon as we get there, we were looking for bonefish. And as soon as we get there, we see like 5 tails sticking up, and it's permit. And they're coming right towards us, and they're about like 250 yards away, 200 yards away, something like that, right? But you can see them just plain as day coming right towards us. And they're getting closer, and I got my line all ready to go. And I'm like, this is going to happen. This is awesome, right? This was the last trip that I actually did for permit, or the last opportunity I had at a permit. So anyway, they're coming towards us. 3 of them break off. There was 5 of them. 3 of them break off, go out towards the middle of the lagoon. Their tails disappear. Don't see them again. 2 keep coming towards us. So he's like, "You ready, amigo?" I said, yeah. So anyway, he says, "Okay, you cast." So anyway, I cast. He said, "Let's sink." So I'm letting it sink. He says, "Strip." So I start stripping like that, and one of them just turns like that. He's coming right for my fly, like wide open. Grabs it. I set the hook. My guide's now screaming, "Big fish, big fish, big fish." And I'm seeing it going. Like after I jam the hook in, I'm seeing it heading towards the middle of the lagoon. And I can tell this is a nice fish, right? And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is wicked." But I had stripped so much line. I got the line between my finger and the cork. So I got tension. And I got all this line coming up. But because of the friction, it's like jumping. And he's screaming. Right? And I got 25-pound test fluorocarbon on the end. He's just going. And the last loop comes up and hooks the handle on the reel. And it snapped that 25-pound fluorocarbon like it was sewing thread.
Yeah.
My guide lost it. He turned around and looked at me. He goes, "Amigo," he goes, "that fish," he says, "at least 20-pound permit, at least 20-pound permit." And I'm like, I don't need you telling me that, man. That's not making me feel any better about this situation. But I've hooked 3 real nice permit, and I've never landed one.
Yeah. And line management on, just from watching videos of permit or bonefish or any like tarpon and stuff, like you finally hook one, amazing, awesome. You fooled the fish, that's sick. Now you got, if you're making an 80-foot cast, you got like roughly, let's say, 40 to 60 feet of line next to you. You're standing on a boat, and you now got to manage that as this thing's taking off. Your heart's pounding. Like I said, the stars got to align. I mean, when I'm swinging for...
You want to know the real fun one, Andrew?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about that 40 feet of line there. Now, most guides won't let you wear shoes in the boat.
So you can feel it.
Not just that, you better hope that line, as it's stripping out, doesn't hook one of your toes. You know what a line burn feels like on your fingers? That's what it feels like between your toes.
Yeah. No, I've done commercial fishing. I'm very familiar with line burns. It's I could only imagine, and your toes, they don't need that. But
nope.
Yeah, it's line. Even yesterday, I was my mom wanted to see how my day of fishing went, so I was showing her. I drove her to the airport this morning, so but yeah, I was showing her a video of me just casting, and she was like, "Oh my God, why do you have so much line in your hand right now?" And I was like, she's like, "Don't you put that on the reel?" And I was like, "No, like that's what you're casting out. Your reel is essentially to hold the line, and then obviously once you get a big fish, then it's your drag system and where you're putting the line back on to land the fish." And she was like, "How do you do that?" And I was like, hope that it doesn't tangle up every time. And when it does tangle up, hope you get it untangled before a fish grabs it. Most of the time, when you're steelheading, it doesn't happen all that often. I mean, I'm sure people have gone tangles and then like been trying to fumble, get it out, and then all of a sudden a fish grabs. But, you know, when you see a saltwater fish just start exploding and running and, you know, or permits or a tarpon's just jumping up, and you're like, the amount of shit going on in that 10 seconds of that first initial, like if that fish runs and you're now on the reel, like that's everything went
perfect,
you know.
yeah,
And you still might not, it might bend,
100%.
you know, from what I've seen and talked to people. But like that initial getting that 40 to 60 feet either out or back on the reel, that's, you know, that's crazy.
Yeah. And the way I fish dry flies for Atlantics, and I mean, you're getting the same situation for when you're stripping with the striped bass here.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage to, I couldn't put a skiff in this river here. I mean, you couldn't put it in, couldn't take it out. It's just, there's no real good boat launches for that. Okay. And it's too, it would be too shallow at low tide for a skiff. So we're running a 14-foot john boat. There's lots of stuff in a john boat for your line to make it get tangled. Like, it's not laying perfectly flat on a deck. You don't have like all them fingers sticking up to keep your line from blowing and moving around. So you have those problems. But the way I fish dry flies for Atlantic salmon, if I have the pool to myself, or if I'm guiding and my clients have the pool to themselves, I go down through on a traditional swing with a wet fly, but then I fish the dry fly coming upriver. So you're casting, the fish can't see you, you're casting, and the fly and the line is all coming towards you. So you don't get no drag on your fly. You're getting a perfect dead drift.
Mm.
But that also poses the issue, you have to strip in that slack. So when the fish takes, he comes up, he takes, he rolls, you set the hook, you instantly have line management. If that fish turns and comes down river, which most fish usually do,
yeah,
now you have slack. So now you're stripping in the line or backing up over the river. And when you're backing up over the river, now you're stepping on your line. So line management is right there key with being able to cast.
Oh, 100.
Cast and then deal with the line that you have in your hand. Yeah. You've got to put those two things together. And the faster that you can put those things together, the more effective you're going to be at, for sure, landing fish.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, it's and then it's a big thing. Like, you know, I do a lot of Euro nymphing during the winter for my clients. And that's such a thin line, right? So when they're casting, you know, and then they turn side or they pull in and turn sides, they're instantly tangled around their feet. So I'm like, okay, to do line management, if I say switch sides while you're in the water, just flick it over kind of thing. And then when we're using like, you know, your typical, like if someone's streamer fishing off the raft, well, now you got, you know, fast casts happening constantly. So you need to know where you're putting your line. And, you know, are you keeping your feet planted? Are you moving your feet around? Because that's the biggest thing. It's the second you move your feet and you're trying to, you know, make a long cast and quick, and, you know, that's, so yeah.
Do you use stripping baskets?
Huh?
Do you use stripping baskets?
On the raft? No. I've thought about it. I mean, for myself, I'm very handy capable, I guess, when it comes to like my line management. I'm quick to it. If like I do get a tangle or it's around my foot, I like don't need to look away necessarily. I can, you know, I can manage it. But for people, I usually try to kind of give them a bit of insight. But I've seen those stripping baskets that go on the front, or like when I was on a hard shell drift boat down in on the Bow River with a guide there, Paul Morale. He's awesome. You know, he had this little, like, I guess a stripping basket at the front of his boat, which was like super awesome because, you know, if we're using a sinking line for streamer fishing, and it goes off the raft, then it's going down in the water. You're not going to get your cast out. But no, my raft is. I still need to get to front stand-up bar, which I'm planning on doing this year, so people can stand and do more streamer fishing, because it's a little hard to streamer fish from sitting, as I'm sure you kind of know.
Oh, yeah, for sure, definitely.
But then, of course, more bars, more things for things to get tangled up on. So when I do ocean fishing, like in estuaries or whatnot, then I have my stripping basket. Definitely.
Have you seen the stripping baskets that you make out of like the little kids' stepping stools?
No.
You got one of those? So your kids got a little plastic stepping stool in front of them.
Yep.
Flip it upside down. It's curved on one side, perfect for going against your side. All you got to do is make a couple slits to put a belt in it, and it's stripping and makes it. I've got a couple of them made out there for clients. Like when you're in the boat, and you just clip it on, and that's all it is. You just go to Canadian Tire,
yeah,
or or Walmart or someplace like that, and they're just a plastic stepping stool.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as you flip it upside down and you look at it, you go, "Huh."
Stripping basket.
Yeah,
you put water in your stripping basket. I've seen people that do that. I'm not really sure why.
I usually end up falling down, so there's usually water in the stripping basket.
Things happen on a boat, that's for sure. Yeah, that's a good one. I love little things. I mean, I the stripping basket I got is, what brand is that? I don't remember the brand, but it has like, it's flat, and then it has all these little like plastic rubbery things that stick up, and so your line kind of like hangs off of it.
And they don't have to be flexible. They can actually be rigid.
Yeah.
So what I've seen some guys do with these stepping stools, like I'm talking about, particularly the ones that they sell at Canadian Tire that I've seen, they're green and white.
Yeah.
When you look through it, there's like a rubber side on one side, but when you look through, there's holes that mount at that rubber stuff.
Yeah.
If you take a drill and just drill through, make holes, and then from the underside coming up into the stripping basket, just hot glue golf tees.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's simple, and like, you can spend $100 or you can spend like $20, $30.
Well, I don't have a problem buying a good stripping basket, but the issue here is we're fishing in, like I said, all this muddy water, and it's salt water. Well, I know they're saltwater safe anyway, but you slip and fall a lot if you're fishing from the banks. Most of my clients don't prefer to fish that way. We fish from the boat majority of the time, but when you're fishing from the bank, sometimes you slip and fall. And if you slip and fall and you hit your stripping basket, it's a pretty good chance you're going to crack it.
Yeah.
I'd rather crack a $10 homemade one than $100. Now if I was out in the ocean all the time, I would probably have one that's more exactly designed. Maybe they're a little bit bigger, so when you're stripping, you're not missing over the side. It's all going in and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, those makeshift ones that I've made over the years, they work pretty good.
Yeah. No, that's good. Little DIY project that you can take on and could improve some line management. And it's pretty crazy to like, I think back when I first started, like even spay fishing, I used to always like go to cast and somehow the line's like between my legs. So I was like, I'm in, 2 feet of water. How did it get between my legs? Who knows? But you do get better at it the more you do it, or at least think about it. Like when I'm teaching people, I like to try to figure out how they learn or how they envision stuff, and then I kind of try to talk, towards that, angle it towards that, because I had a hard time learning in school because I just didn't learn the way everyone else or the average person was learning. But that gave me the ability to see that, not everyone learns the same way. So when I see someone trying to like manage or not even thinking of their line, I'll give them the half part of the day where I'm not even worrying about their line management necessarily. But then once they got the casting going and all that, then it's like, okay, when you strip, make a point to strip, to a certain spot. Now,
Yeah.
Do your cast and think like, this is where I want my line to be. So when I go to cast and it flies around,
And you should be able to do that without actually looking at where it's going. Like,
yeah, just pick a spot, get used to that. Muscle memory will grow pretty quickly. And then if I got them for that 2 days that I love so much, then that second day, that first half hour, they're getting back in the groove of casting. They're probably better than they were at the end of the day before.
because they're rested.
They're rested, and it's not so much mental power to remember these things. Right. And then that second day can just be, even if the fishing wasn't great, it's just like they feel way more confident, way more like efficient with it. But yeah, stripping basket on the boat, it's definitely crossed my mind. So, and I like that little, you could easily have that in your dry box or whatever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's a bit of a tough.
And if you put it in your dry box and you have it bucket ways up, you just fill that. So, I mean, you're not really losing any space per se, right?
Yeah.
I'll send you a picture of the one I got there when we're finished there.
Yeah, please and thank you. That's good. No,
I just took an old webbing belt and just weave it through. Like I had to.
Well, your wading belt. Is that what you're meaning? Like your wading belt, you could even.
Yeah, but the problem with most wading belts these days, like especially if you're buying like Sims waders or something like that, they're big, thick neoprene ones.
Yeah.
So all you need is like a 1 or 1.5 inch webbing, like an old school wading belt that most people have 1,000 of them sitting somewheres. Then you just cut a couple little slits. I'll show you in the picture, and I don't know, maybe you could share it on with your social media or whatever too. But yeah, it's very simple. Like from the time you get home from Canadian Tire, you literally have it made in. If you got a Dremel tool, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, and then if you really need your special brands, just get a sticker from your shop and put the sticker on it, and then you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I like the.
I got stickers all over mine. You would know what brand it is.
I love. I was planning on doing that with my dry box, just like covering it in stickers, but it's
I cover everything in stickers. I'll send you a couple of mine. Nice. I got decals. Yeah. Shoot me your address and I'll send you a couple.
For sure. Yeah, I need to make more stickers. I've been putting off a lot of spending lately this year. I'm trying to get back on top of everything, and of course Christmas, like Mexico, son's birthday, Christmas, New Year's. Those are, so I just went through the thick of it, and now I'm looking at this upcoming season. Like, okay, I got fly tying materials out the wazoo. I got all the rods I need. I got lines I need. I got enough hooks and everything. I'm like, okay, good. I don't need to spend any more money. But that's when you can save $1 and make something for, a quarter of the cost of buying.
You know what my biggest fear is, Andrew?
What's that?
That when I die, my wife's going to sell all my fishing gear for what I told her that I paid for it.
Oh, geez. that does sound scary.
So, somebody's going to be getting a good deal on some rods.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually, that makes me think, I got like a bunch of polar bear from this lady. Her grandfather, or her father, I guess, passed away, and she had a bunch of fly tying material, and we went to go pick it up, and she was like, yeah, I don't know what it's worth. And I like looked at it and I was like, so that is actually worth quite a bit. Like, this is just polar bear.
Oh, nice.
Long, short, all the fluorescent colors, natural colors, like so much polar bear. And I was like, that's worth a lot. I don't want to pay a lot, but I'm I'm letting you know that's worth a lot. And she was like, don't worry about it. Like, if you're going to use it, that makes me, I'm sure that would make him happier than, getting more money for it. But yeah, it's, people don't know, like I've seen some rods and stuff go for so inexpensive when it's like a crazy, something. I had a friend that got like a really old bamboo rod that was made by like a really nice bamboo rod maker, which I don't know his name, but got it for like $100, and it's probably worth who knows, person.
But it's better than somebody throwing it away.
Ooh, could you imagine?
Like, oh man,
a garbage man and seeing this rod, and you'd be like, what's happening to this world? Like the crap.
Yeah. Well, here's a perfect example of how stuff can easily just. My uncle used to do a lot of work for the RCMP for he owned a towing company,
mm-hmm.
and like when people would pass away, like say an older gentleman passed away, his kids didn't hunt or anything, right? So his wife would hypothetically call the RCMP and say, my husband passed away. I have guns here in the house that were his. Nobody wants them. What can I do? I have taken a torch because there was no other option. They bring them in to the RCMP, like just to get rid of them. And then the RCMP would bring them to us. And I've taken a torch and cut guns in half that were worth thousands of dollars, like old collector's guns. And like this woman, if she had just found somebody that knew what she had, and for any of the ladies out there or whatever, find somebody that knows what your husband had.
Yeah.
Make sure that it gets to the right person that would appreciate it and that you get the value for it.
That's
because I can assure you, ladies, that over and under that your husband has that he told you he paid $200 for, he paid $2,000.
Yeah. Well, and then if he has a whole room dedicated to his hobby, there's a pretty good chance that stuff is actually worth more, either maybe it's not even worth that much money, but to the right person that's worth insane. Like,
correct.
An old reel that you might look at and be like, oh, this is just a super old reel, like whatever, but that old reel is actually like one out of 50 left in the world. Who knows?
Right.
So
like a 1920 Hardy Perfect or something like that.
Yeah. See, and I didn't even have the fear that you have, but now I have that fear. I'm going to write down a book in case I pass away, and I'll leave that for the wife. Like, read this, read this, and
what happens if she reads it before?
Well, that's a good point too. Oh geez, man, this is
I got a spare room. I got a spare room, Andrew. I got a spare room.
No, and it's at least with my fly tying material, they all have the stickers on them, so at least she can see the depth that I've gone in with that. But yeah, the rods and reels, I would, I gave my buddy, I took him fly fishing on the Bow River. He lives in Alberta, and I ended up giving him a sage rod and a sage reel because I just he's my brother. And I just want him to fish, and, he really enjoyed himself, but he didn't really want to spend the money. And it was a rod and reel I didn't use. And I was like, that value of that I paid, 5 years ago, don't even care about, but the value of seeing you get into this sport.
Does he know what it's worth?
Yeah. I let him, I was like, don't sell it, give it back. If you just on it. But I was like, that is, he actually he used to live on the island with me, and we used to go fishing when we were younger. So he does know sage, because the person that used to take us out fishing when we were younger, we'd use sage rods for just sea run cutthroat, but just bobber and worm. which I don't even know if it's fully legal, but I was young, so I think it is. But anyways, long story short, so he did see the value in it, and yeah, his first fish was a 24-inch brown on a streamer. I was in Alberta.
Beginner's luck. It's a thing,
dude. Always, whenever I have someone new and someone that's like experienced on the raft, I'm always like, okay, just so you know, like that's the person that's going to catch that thing that you're wanting to catch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we went out to the river. He had never fly fished before, and I was talking to that Paul Morale guide in on the Bow River. I was going to go down the river with him, and then he offered to take me and my friend out as well. So I was like, perfect. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to, get him on nymphing. And he was like, no, just Paul doesn't nymph at all. He just streamer fish and dry fly fishes. And so he was like, just start him on streamer fishing. He has no idea. It's going to be a learning curve no matter what he does. And if he starts with streamers, that's what he's going to know. And we love streamer fishing. So I was like, that's a good point. So I like taught him how to cast a little bit, like half an hour in the parking lot. And I was like, okay, he's a smart kid. So I was like, I see that your gears are turning and you understand what you're doing. And here's a fly on it now. And just take a few casts with that. Showed him how to open up his loops. We get on the water. I let him fish like not really that great of water / I didn't really know the water that well, but I had a better idea. And so I like finally saw him doing what I wanted to see happen. And then we're starting to go down. We're going under a bridge. He casts out. Or no, he's casting on the left-hand side. I'm anchored up. And I was like, okay, I just want to show you something. So I show him, I was like, I'll show you on the right side. And I got a bump. And I was like, oh, no, take the rod back, cast back out there, and strip it back. And he does that. And then he gets a 24-inch brown. And I'm in Alberta to catch that fish. And so I was like looking at him. I was like, realize to you this is just a fish. Like you catch pike and stuff under the ice, and you've caught salmon with me when we were younger, so like this isn't maybe the biggest fish, but like this is kind of a trophy fish for a lot of people,
Yeah, everyone. You should really take in what you just did here.
Yeah, I was like, this is big, and I was like, this is going to be the biggest fish of the day most likely. And we like fished the rest of the day and he caught like a few more fish. And he was like, at the end of the day, he was like, I know I still don't fully grasp what has just happened, but I have a better understanding of like how awesome that was. And then we went out with that Paul guy, and Paul was just, guiding him and helping him. And he just was catching plenty of fish and was just super captivated. So it was really cool to just kind of like, not just go to the easiest thing like nymphing and watching a bobber or, Euro nymphing and seeing someone that has never fished before and like tossing, 3 to 5 inch streamers plus a double fly setup and do great after a few days of doing it. So yeah, it was a good eye opener to like, if someone's new, doesn't mean they have to start with like what's considered the easiest. They can actually just like learn whatever.
Oh yeah. Oh man, like I get a lot of people here that want to go out and example, father son. They want to experience fishing or they want to experience fly fishing, So I'll take them out for chain pickerel or striped bass or smallmouth bass. Like smallmouth bass fishing on the fly, man, that's great fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great way to introduce people to fly fishing because you'll have more opportunities at hook and fish. You're going to probably have more hookups. You're going to have more strikes and stuff like that. And Well, let's face it, most people, to get into fishing, you're going to have to show them catching fish.
Yeah.
Not fishing. So they got to see what the reward is at the end, and then you groom them into, okay, if you want to target Atlantic salmon, then you have to realize that you're no longer going to be catching 15 or 20 fish a day. You're going to be casting and not catching.
Yeah.
But when you catch, that reward, no disrespect to the smallmouth bass or chain pickerel, I mean, they're great fisheries and great fish to target. But that reward is going to be greater, but the effort is going to have to be put in more.
Yeah.
But to take somebody that's never fished before, such as, like I spoke there earlier, doesn't even know how to cast, and you put them on an Atlantic salmon river, they have a lot of things against them already.
Yeah.
And now they don't know how to fish. At the end of even a day, or at the end of a 5-day fishing trip, fully guided fishing trip, they're probably not going to be sitting there going, "Oh, I can't wait to do that again."
Yeah.
They might be, "I can't wait to go on another adventure," but I don't think Atlantic salmon's for me. That was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Whereas if they already had experience, or even just the practice, like I said earlier, like if you can cast, like my favorite people to guide are steelheaders, like hardcore steelheaders. They can cast, they can fish, and if you show them one fish a day, a steelheader's ecstatic.
Yeah. Oh my God, this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So they appreciate that one fish when they do get it, but they're never expecting 8-10 fish a day. Like back when I first started fishing Atlantic salmon, there was no limit in a lot of places on how many fish you could catch and release. So when the fishing was good, you could go and you were catching fish and releasing fish, catching fish, release. But steelhead's not like that. And from what I know, it was never really like that. I mean, I'm sure there was some times where the fishing was a whole lot better than what it is now. Yes, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, kind of had a brain fart there too, trying to sound smart, right?
Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah, like I guess in a nutshell, it's a tough way to introduce people to fly fishing. Atlantic salmon would be, right?
Yeah.
But
My mom wanted to go down the river. I haven't taken her out yet, but it just hasn't kind of landed up. And she's someone that likes warm weather.
Yep.
So, she was even like, she asked me this trip. She was like, "Are we going to go down the river?" And I was like, "To be honest, Mom, like, I'm sure we'll catch a few fish, but you're going to be cold. Like, I'll be in Cranbrook guiding. Like, that's going to be warm weather. That's when you should come out with me, because whether we're catching a ton of fish or not, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be warm. But if you're cold all day, and
overall experience will be better.
And like if you're sitting on a raft during the winter and you're sore, for a lot of people that don't fish constantly, the hand motions, holding your arm up, stripping, all these things are muscles that you're not used to using. You're going to be sore at some point, and you're probably not going to want to fish or take a little break. If you're freezing and you're taking a break, you're going to get colder, and mental games when you're cold. And I can hear what you're saying about the steelheaders, because like, yeah, we're used to being like cold, no fish for, my first year steelheading, which is kind of how I started, but I hadn't caught a lot of fish anyway, so it didn't really matter at that point. But 3 months it took to catch one, and the fact that I caught one my first year is insane. Most people don't catch a steelhead on their own without a guide. for their first year, and I couldn't cast very well. So like it stars aligned, you know, the fact that the hook stayed in his mouth, the fact that I found that fly that my buddy tied on the ground, and it was like a very sparse little thing, whereas all my flies were these big, you know, one pack of black marabou and a bunch of flash, you know what I mean? So the stars aligned there, but in my second year I caught two. And third year I caught three, fourth year I caught four, and then my fifth year I was like, I'm freaking the best in the world. And then I hooked six and didn't land one. And now it's the next year. So now I'm like, you know, pretty dialed with the idea of what I'm doing. Do I have room to improve on everything? For sure, but I can stand in a river all day long, be cold, and at the end of the day be like, this was a great day with no fish, no nothing. You know, to me, that's like, because like we were talking about, that reward at the end of it. If at the end of the season I get that one steelhead that just, you know, basically makes me shit my pants when it happens, I'm going to be, everything was worth it. Even if I just hooked one, I tricked one into thinking that I had a meal for it. That it means a lot to me. So it takes a lot of discipline when, you know, especially when you don't know. If you've never caught a fish and you start on like Atlantic salmon or steelhead or, you know, a tarpon or a bonefish or whatever, and you've never even caught a fish in your life, like, yeah, maybe going egg season on trout is the best way to go, you know, or
Yeah.
dry fishing, so you can at least see a fish come up and like mess around. I always think about it too, like how many fish, you know, did I swing past that looked at my fly and was like, no, that's too fast, that's too slow, that's too big, too small, whatever they're thinking. Um, that's actually a good point, though. How do you manage people's not wants, but expectations? Do you, like, when you first get, you know, let's say a new client, do you talk about them with their expectations maybe prior to them coming, or
Generally, yeah. If I have that opportunity to talk, and like, you know, if they didn't book through my website, but I mean, even still with a booking, like especially on a package trip like Atlantic salmon, you can't book that through my website. You have to physically speak to me, and at that time, that's what I'll ask. Like, you know, your expectations, but the biggest thing is their limitations. Like, are you limited to, you know, a short cast? Are you limited to how far you can walk? Are your wading capabilities limited? Those are the biggest factors that I want to know right off the bat. And then after that, I'll ask them, okay, so what is it that you're looking to get out of this trip? Are you looking to see multiple venues, such as, you know, different rivers, pools? Like, I could, like, if somebody comes and fishes with me for Atlantic salmon in Newfoundland, it's a 5-day package. So there's 7 rivers. So you could physically fish a different river every day if you wanted to. You could certainly have every session on a different piece of water, whether it be a different pool, different river, completely different, like, you know, crystal clear water versus a bigger, darker river. So I always want to know what their expectations are in terms of an overall. When it comes to the fish, they're limited to how many fish they're actually allowed to catch in a day anyways, which in Newfoundland is you're allowed to release 3 fish a day.
okay.
So, I mean, that's the maximum that they're going to be able to catch and release in a day anyways. So my biggest thing is always, because I have, my venue is so diverse in the river systems that are there. Like a lot of outfitters, you know, you particularly like a fly-in outfit or something like that. You go in, you're on that river. That's the river that you're fishing for the week. There is no other river there. There is no other option. So the expectations for that particular customer might be, okay, I'm looking for a fly-in experience. I don't want to see anybody else fishing. my venues are all public water, and they are accessible by locals and stuff, which totally does not affect my gig anyways, because I'm Monday to Friday. My clients show up on Sunday. They start fishing Monday. They're done fishing Friday night. Saturday and Sundays when most of the working locals are out fishing anyway. I'm not in their way, and they're not in my way, and they're not taking up space where my client could be fishing, and I'm not taking up space with my clients where the locals could be fishing. So I built a great respect with the local fishermen on all of my rivers. So that's great. So yeah, for me. I'd like to know what they want to do while they're here, how much water they want to fish. Do you only want to fish two-handed? If you only want to fish two-handed, then I know there's X amount of areas that I'm not even going to take you, because I mean, it's not a two-handed area. So basically, like, yeah, it's just, what is it that you're looking to get out of this trip? Do you want to see a lot of backcountry stuff? Are you looking to learn how to maybe fish dry flies better?
Mm-hmm.
And while doing that, you're obviously in some of the best Atlantic salmon waters in the world. So yeah, I always want to know what their expectations are in terms of what they want to do over the 5 days that they're there, because there is options of like I said, different rivers. Hell, man, I've even had some guys that said, what do you know? Like, where could we jump in a helicopter tomorrow? And like, can we hire a helicopter tomorrow and fly to a spot that you know that that I would like, or something like that? And like, I've had guys actually do that. Like, hire a helicopter for like half a day to go fishing. Like,
Crazy.
that's fun.
Yeah. For myself, with the expectations, since it's not I work for an outfit. I usually get a little bit of information about who I'm taking out either the night before, or maybe, however it may work out. So I like to touch on it that day, like when we get there, and I'm like, okay, like, do we have expectations? What is the expectations? And I always find that someone that comes in with like basically no expectations aside from they want to learn, they're going to have just a great day, like no matter what happens. And that also plays out for myself. When I first got into steelheading and I finally got one, expectations were, oh, well, I got one now. I know what I'm doing 100%. Like, next time I go out, I'm going to get one. And then you don't. And I would, that drive home, I'd be like, not stoked. Wasn't a good day. No fish. But then as the years went on and I started, I guess getting humbled time in and time out, I started realizing like the expectations you put on things, especially like, I haven't done a ton of guided trips, but the few I've done, I was at the level of trying to go in with no expectations aside from I want to learn from this guide. And the first time the first time I went down the river to streamer fish was with the guide I work for now, on the island. He that morning was like, "Hey, what's your expectations today?" Like, it was 0 degrees last night. Like, we just went from 5 degrees at night for weeks on end to 0 degrees. Maybe not the greatest streamer day out there. And I was like, I don't even care. I'm tossing streamers and I want to learn, I want to see if I can do what I need to do. If I turn a fish, amazing. If we catch a fish, insane. But like, so I went in with very low expectations and I had a great day. Did not catch a fish. Well, we ended up Euroing like one spot, but when we were actually streamer fishing, I didn't even see a fish turn. So trying to place the right expectations for people, especially like you're saying, knowing their like level of skills, their skill set. If you have no skills and you're expecting to catch, the 3 a day Atlantic salmon, you're probably setting yourself up for failure in terms
Correct.
of how your trip's going to mentally go. If you place your idea on like, hey, I just want to be able to skate this fly down that run properly by the end of this trip, 5 days, probably going to see a good result, and you're probably going to be pretty happy. And then, obviously if a fish comes along, you're just going to be insanely excited. So yeah, it's definitely one of those situations where, like, everyone's different. I've had people on my raft who, and I'm sure you've had people on your boat or raft or whatever, that come with no expectations aside from they want to learn and enjoy the adventure. And then you get the one that's like, well, I want this size of fish caught this way. And it's like, oh, okay.
That's okay. That's okay if they have a goal, as long as their expectation is reality. Like, you know what I mean? Like the expectation of, okay, I want to hook, I want to become a member of the 20-pound club on Atlantic salmon, and I want to do it on a bomb or dry fly. That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you could do in all river systems, obviously. And it's not something you can do all year round. So to find that particular target, it might be your version of my permit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might take you some time to get that. I personally, I've caught, and I'm not bragging, but I've caught thousands of Atlantic salmon. I still have not caught a 20-pounder on a dry fly. Yeah. I've only got one fish that I've had in my hands that I caught, one fish in my entire fishing career of Atlantic salmon that was over 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Just most of the systems that I fish don't have that quality of fish in them. And a lot of rivers don't. I mean, there's a lot of rivers in North America that don't hold 20-pound fish. The majority of them actually don't.
Mm-hmm.
But the rivers that I do predominantly target, you have a pretty good chance of hooking 10 to 15-pound fish.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and that's the thing too, is like those like sought after fishes. When I was in Alberta
24 with proper grammar.
Yeah, when I was in Alberta and my buddy caught the fish that I wanted, and I like passed him the rod instead of like, I got a bump. I knew that like there was something in there and that there's potential for it to eat. Again, if it was interested that first time around, I was like slightly sad. I was like, God, that really sucked. But then I was also like, I'm so happy for you. This is a weird feeling I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
I did end up catching a much bigger one on the swing at night, so that was really sick. But
night fishing's a whole other game again. I don't know. I'll do it with my boat, but I'm not too into wading. I did it once, man. I did it once on the same river that we striper fish on, way up in the Clearwater, and there's night fishing there for the brown trout. So I went, this is way over 20 years ago. On there, and I go up with this guy that I worked with, and he was quite adamant at it. He used to do it any chance he could. He really liked the night fishing. So anyway, we go up there, and he's down below me in the river, and I'm coming down through, and I'm probably in the water slightly over my knees, maybe like almost maybe to my waist or whatever, right? So halfway between there or whatever, and I'm going and going and going. Everything's kind of good. And all of a sudden, man, it wasn't a fish, whatever it was, but something swam between my two legs.
Mm.
And Jesus might have made the water, and Moses might part the water. But I can tell you, Dave Hartlin ran right clean over the top of it that night. I don't even think my boots touched the surface. I mean, I was just hovering.
Yeah.
Freaked me right out. My buddy goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going back to the car." I said, "Feel free to do whatever you want. I'm just going to go for a nap." I said, "But I'm done with this night fishing."
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I won't go like free diving in the ocean or something. I like boats. I like being on top. I'll fish. I like night fishing. It's different. Once again, you kind of got to go out with the right expectations that like you're doing something a hard way. Yeah, brown trout are feeding at night, but like now you're casting in bushes or around bushes at night. You're going to get hooked up. Like keeping calm is a big thing and all that. But yeah, I probably would run out just as fast as you if something swam between my legs and I
I think it was a beaver is what it was, but I mean, it was like 2:00 in the morning, man. I wasn't into it after that. I kind of lost the drive for it.
No, yeah, that's funny though. I'd probably run. Yeah, I would get it. Well, let's go a little bit back on Atlantic salmon, just because that's what a lot of people think of the East Coast when they're thinking of big fisheries to target. I guess it's kind of cool that the striped bass are starting to be like how. One more thing on the striped bass, like 20 years ago, were you fishing for striped bass in your area?
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
Wow. So
really, we had stripers here, but it wasn't to the capacity they are now.
So the fishery became a thing.
It always was a thing, but now it's a bigger thing. Like it's like 10 times the amount of people fishing, which from almost none before, 10 times isn't really that bad anyways. But I don't even know how much the fishery would have grown, more than 10 times.
Yeah.
Like we have an extremely, extremely healthy striped bass fishery. So
crazy.
Yeah, that's a growing part of my business for sure.
And then that's a lot of Americans coming up for that, or are you still getting like half and half Canadians and Americans, or
what? The majority of my business is Americans because that's where I advertise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get guys like man, I had a guy. Oh, he's become a pretty good client now, but he flew up last year to fish just 3 days because he knew how crazy this fishery had become. He flew up here all the way from Oregon. So not only did he fly up, but he flew completely across the whole continent to come fish for 3 days, and he had fantastic fishing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What's the migration of the Atlantic salmon? I've touched on this before on the podcast, but it's been a hot minute. What are they?
So you mean in how they actually migrate?
Yeah, like are they going down? Are they going up? Are they going?
No, they're going up. Most fish go up off of like Greenland, Norway. So that's the migration route that pretty well all Atlantic salmon will take, including like fish from Europe. So they pretty much all go to the north. I'll touch on this for a second. This is something that I usually try to explain to people. But a grouse and a salmon are genetically different. They're not really the same fish at all, except that they're both Atlantic salmon. How's that, Dave? You might ask. Well, an Atlantic salmon is born in the river. They spend 3 years in the fresh water before they become a smolt, and then they go to the ocean. A grouse will go to the ocean for only 1 year. Naturally, he's going to be smaller, but he comes back into the fresh water after only 1 year at sea, and he spawns. So his first spawning check on his scales, so this is all readable by his scales, just like rings on a tree. If he comes back to spawn after only 1 winter at sea, genetically, he's a grouse, and he will always be a grouse. He might grow to be 10 or 12 pounds, and you might think that you just caught a salmon, And you wouldn't know unless you looked at the rings on the scales under a microscope. So genetically, he will always be a gross.
Hmm.
And a true multi-sea winter salmon, same situation, 3 years in the fresh water, will leave and spend at least 2 winters at sea. Some of them will spend 3. He'll come back. He'll never come back as a gross. He'll never come back as a 3.5 pound or 5 pound fish. He's going to come back. He's going to be 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18 pounds, depending on how long he's gone. That fish does the full migration. So he goes all the way up off the coast of Greenland, spends his time up there feeding on rich food, shrimp, creel, all that stuff, and then he'll work his way back. Regardless, salmon or gross. They're born in a river. If they're born in a tributary of said river, wherever they're born, they come back.
Yeah. Crazy, eh?
And half the time, I can't find my car in the Walmart parking lot, but they come back to the same tributary they were born.
I know, they're like at the same rock. They're like, hey, that's my rock. Perfect. I know that always like amazes me with the anadromous fish. Like, it's one thing to be like, yeah, it's just amazing. It's incredible, really. What was my question? I had a decent question. Maybe it'll pop back into my head, but so yeah, I didn't really realize there's 2, I guess, scents of Atlantic salmon.
2 genetic breakups.
2 genetics, but from my memory, if it's serving me correctly, Atlantic salmon, when they go into the true Atlantic salmon, when they go into the river to spawn, they don't die. They might go back to the salt, or are they usually there to die as well?
Nope, they're repeat spawners.
Yeah, okay. And so how long is their lifespan? It's it can be like 8 to 10 years.
It could be, yeah, on a big fish. The big problem is I think the biggest issue is happening in the ocean, whatever it is, and I think it's the same thing in the Pacific, right?
Yeah,
things are happening out there, like predation. I mean, we have 1 billion seals here. Like, seals are a big issue here. We always had a healthy seal hunt, and everything stayed in check. Now, so much that's not in check anymore.
Yeah,
but that's a whole other conversation. But I would say the average fish would be 5 to 8 years.
mm-hmm.
You know, that would be the average life expectancy. But now, back that up a little bit. You go back to the fish that here, or Newfoundland, or majority of most Atlantic salmon spend 3 years in the fresh water the first 3 years of their life. They've now found through studies in places like Ungava Bay, where their season is so short for the fish to grow, these fish here are 5 years before they go to the salt water. So they're 5 years old before they even see the salt water for the first time. So I think in a place like that, you might get fish that are living longer because the conditions are better. The oceans are cleaner, or, you know, less traffic, less predation. I mean, there's not as many seals way up in the Arctic as what there is here, where we have open water year round. So I think those fish there are probably, you know, you might be like the George River. I guided on the George River up that flows into Ungava Bay, notably the only river that I've ever been on that flows north. That's kind of but the average salmon there is 16 pounds.
Yeah. Okay.
So for that fish to reach 16 pounds, yes, he's going to grow in the freshwater. But if he was 5 years old before he even went, and it took him 3 or 4 years at sea to reach 16 pounds, that fish is already 9 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So, but on an average, I would say it would be 5 to 8 years old would be the average life expectancy of an Atlantic salmon.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think, like, salmon out here, they're on average a 4-year cycle. I know there can be a bit of variance on that, but the steelhead, same kind of thing. They can go spawn 3 times in their lifetime, and I think kind of the same life expectancy slash what's happening out in the ocean. Is it fish, commercial fishing? Is it seals? Is it orcas? Whatever. Can you imagine going out to the ocean and like living in a river and then going out and seeing what's out there? Like you got a lot.
Everything wants to eat you out there, right?
Everything wants to eat you. So, yeah, I think that's what's like really special about, that type of fish is they are going to go back out to the ocean, especially if you do proper catch and release and keep them wet and let them rest for a moment, and all the things that we're trying to do to keep these fisheries going. But to me, like when I touch a steelhead, I'm literally like, you've seen some shit, like in my mind, I'm like, not only did you make it past commercial fisheries, you've made it past seals, sea lions, heck, probably like all the big rockfish that could eat you if they really wanted to.
Everything, man.
Everything, possible. And then you made it into your estuary where more shit's trying to eat you. That birds, whatever. Then you made it into the river where once again there's a new set of creatures that are trying to get you, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like salmon, I love catching pinks and cohos off the beach, which coho I haven't caught a ton of, but pinks I've caught lots of pinks off the beaches and stuff. And it's super fun once they're in the river. It's still loads of fun, but I usually start now gearing up for trout and doing other things, just because for me, I'm like, I've caught my fair share of salmon and they're going to die, and I want them to spawn, and I want them to spawn the best they can. So I just kind of leave them alone. But when they get really far up into the system, whatever system it is, like they don't have a ton of energy left. Their bodies are decaying. They're colored up. They're ready to basically spawn and die. And then the amount of nutrients that gives the river system, the more I learn about it, is insane. I mean, like you're talking the scales on a fish, you can tell like their spawning seasons and stuff. A good friend of mine, Tristan, he was talking about how the rings on trees, you can tell when there was like large spawns back in the day and stuff, because the nutrients that was gathered from the rivers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The depth that it goes on how important the species going into the rivers and dying right away, and feeding, trout, birds, bears, wolves, eagles, list keeps going, humans, all the little.
But it's funny that, like, you touch on that, and I mean, naturally, 110% that's correct. But what's funny is none of our rivers have fish that are dying on them, because none of our fish do that. They're all repeat spawners, whether it be sea run trout or whether it be the sea run salmon. But our river, our river valleys are still lush and healthy and stuff. It's just funny that it's such an important thing on the West Coast for these fish to die. Obviously, I mean, whoever the creator created it that way, but nothing on the East Coast has that fertilizer. But yet, our trees still grow.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, whenever I think, or like I catch myself thinking about like how a fish can go out to the ocean for 4 years or something and come back and find their same spawning gravel that they were born in. Like,
yeah,
that alone is insane. Like you were saying, if you go park at Walmart and it's a busy day, where the heck did I park? You're lost. So Yeah, it is. It is interesting to see the difference in the West Coast and the East Coast on that. I haven't really fully thought about it, but now that my brain's kind of turning on it, it is very interesting. I One thing I was thinking about like was steelhead, because I know like on the East Coast, the Great Lakes and stuff with the steelhead, people are like, oh yeah, we got steelhead here, and then on the West Coast they're like, well, those aren't actual steelhead, those are just big rainbows, and then there's always that argument back and forth. For me, the way I see it is like, if you said there was only 10 white rhinos left in the world, and then someone was like, oh well, I have 30 white rhinos here that are like captive bred or whatever, the thing is, it takes away from the severity of the situation. So I think that's where a lot of like the steelhead talk back and forth is like, a steelhead is an anadromous fish that goes to the ocean, and spends time there and goes and spawns in rivers and goes back to the ocean. So if we like, talk about the exact procedure of what makes a steelhead, then one that goes to a lake and then back to the river would not be considered. But it takes away the severity of what we got going on here, because people are like, someone that doesn't know is like, oh, there's plenty of steelhead out on the east
Great Lakes.
Yeah, and they're fine. Like there's steelhead around, so it
They're
kind of
not really steelhead though. They're migratory rainbows.
yeah, exactly. So it kind of just like all these little things always pop into my head, and I'm always pondering like like we said with like the center pin or fly fishing or spay fishing, we always make fun of each other, and oh, we got this here, or oh, you do it like that, I do it like this, but at the end of the day, it's like there's certain things that well, yeah, Atlantic salmon, we don't want them gone. We don't want all these fisheries that are so amazing, and that people like you and me who have spent a lifetime or half a lifetime getting good at, we want to see that stuff thrive. Like I would love to see, steelhead numbers grow as I grow up. That would be amazing. Same with you. You want
100%.
your fisheries thrive as you grow up. So anything we can do to preserve them or help them, educate people, take care of it, pick up garbage, whatever it may be, is like, we feel like it's our duty on the water, and then teaching people good manners, and like, oh, there's a guy fishing there, give him space. These little things that you might overlook, but it's like it's so important to take care of everyone, even if you don't agree with other people. But
That's right.
yeah, went on a little rant there. Got emotional, man.
Hey man, fishing's emotional.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. There's all kinds of emotions.
You hook the same branch 10 times.
You get happy, you get pissed off, you get cranky, you get more pissed off because you're cranky. There's all kinds of emotions in fly fishing.
And then you remember that you haven't ate or gone to the washroom in 8 hours, and your feet are cold.
And you haven't caught any fish.
Yeah.
And you swear you'll never do it again, but you'll get up tomorrow morning when the alarm clock goes off.
It's funny. I was talking with one of my good buddies, who I guide with, but we were saying like, we were just fishing, and I was like, man, out of all the steelhead I've caught, which is in a huge number, probably about half of them I caught the day that, or like the moment I was like, it's not happening today, I give up. And then all of a sudden I got one on. And he was like, dude, I've had that experience too, where I'm like, today's not going to happen. And all of a sudden you get that fish. And we were just joking around, like, do they hear us? So I was standing there, and I was like, I've given up on catching you, just hoping that swing would produce it. But yeah, there's something about, and I think that kind of falls with expectation when you just like let the river flow, or the, body of water you're on do its thing, and you're just doing its thing, and you're more focused on your presentation and enjoying the outside than it, like, I think the fish pick up on that, man, whether it goes through the your fly line and the tingles, and there's an energy electrical force that goes out there, and there's like this fly.
Well, I think anytime, I believe in like karma and stuff like that. So I think anytime you're putting good vibes out into the universe, I think you're going to get good vibes back.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you mentioned like what you just said there about, on the last day, or when you're not looking, when you're thinking, okay, it's not going to happen or whatever. Brings me back to the story of this older gentleman that I guided years ago for moose hunting, actually, in Newfoundland. And I mean, I got a pretty good reputation with moose hunting. I've been very successful at it, and I'd be going in. I'd call my wife, and it'd be Sunday, and I'd say, okay, I'm going in. I'm going to be no cell service or anything. I won't be out for sure until Thursday if we got to come out and get supplies or something like that. Generally, every week she would hear back from me on Monday evening. I'd be back to the lodge, trophy bowl, everybody happy and stuff like that. But this one week I was having a hard go, man. No matter where we went, like we were seeing animals, but nothing like what this hunter's expectations were.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to that, like when he came at the beginning of the week, particularly with hunting, I always ask guys, what's your expectation? Are you looking for a trophy bull? Because if you're looking for a trophy bull, I'm going to be pursuing him differently than what I would be a smaller bull. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be calling differently, so on and so forth. So I want to know. So this guy was looking for a trophy, and we went all week, man. We were looking and looking and looking. And by Wednesday, I'm starting I'm starting to feel bad for you. Like, we got shitty weather. I said, and we got a lot of things going against us and stuff like that. I said, but hopefully it'll be today. And he started on Wednesday. When I started to feel bad about things, he started Wednesday morning. He said, it only takes one. And then Wednesday night, we never seen anything. I said, geez, man, I said, it's getting tough. We only got 2 days left. And he looked at me and go, it only takes one. And it was Friday morning before he got his moose. And he got what he came for. And it was the only big moose we saw all week.
Yeah.
But he said, it only took one, didn't it?
Yeah.
So if you're not expecting, like he wasn't expecting, I don't think, to see the moose that he ended up getting, because it was a big bull. But that wasn't his expectation, and it just happened. Mm-hmm. Like you said, some of the best times you've had fishing, or some of the coolest moments you've had have been when it's just not going to happen today, and then wham, you get that fish.
Yeah. On all those times that I ever, like, let's say, air quotes, gave up, I didn't actually stop fishing. That's the main thing. I kept fishing and kept fishing the way that it would work to produce what I was wanting. But mentally, I was like, okay, I'm now going to focus my attention to casting, or making sure I'm getting that drift that I'm looking for, or whatever, or maybe I'm going to try new water. And even though it's probably not going to happen there, I'll just fish it anyways. And then next, it's, yeah.
And that's a good way to fish if you've only got a limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. But like when I do my 5-day trips, or some guys will come for 2 weeks. When I do my Atlantic salmon trips, you can get pretty burnt out. So it's like June, July, so your longest days of the year. Obviously June 21st, and that's right smack dab in the middle of my prime time is June 21st. So you got the longest day of the year. That's a lot of daylight hours. And I don't ever guide from daylight till dark anyway. It's like generally an 8 to 10 hour day. Anything more than that, I mean, you've had your day, right? Yeah. You've had fun. But I'll find guys will get burnt out after like day 2, day 3. I mean, it's daylight at 4:30, so you're getting up at 3:30 in the morning, right? Or 4 o'clock, depending on where we're going fishing that day, depending on how much time you need to get ready, and breakfast and bathroom runs and all that stuff. So what I'll generally like to do to keep guys on their game is, if it's a bright bluebird sunny day, the fishing in the middle of the day is no good anyway. So I'll run a split program. So we'll go out in the morning, we'll fish for 3, 4, 4, 5 hours in the morning, depending on how the fishing is, cloud cover, how the fish are reacting, whether there's sun on the pool that we're on yet or whatever. But I'll fish that. Then we leave. We go back. We'll eat lunch, and then do what the salmon do in the middle of the day, take a nap. So then you nap. You get up. You have your supper at, like, we'll say 5 o'clock. Well, it's still daylight for another 5 hours yet, and I'll try to get my guys. Sometimes you get these keeners that, they think, okay, I got to get on the water. So they'll go out, they'll get on the water, they'll fish in the morning. Right after supper, it's 5 o'clock, and I'll go, okay, guys, well, we'll probably go at around 7. And they'll be like, well, do you mind if we just go out now? I said, well, we can. Yeah, no problem. So I'll get everything all ready, and, we'll go out, and we'll be on the water for, we'll say 5:30 or something like that. Next thing you know, they're fishing. The sun's still up. I know the fish ain't going to take at 6 o'clock. Be fishing away, and all of a sudden it's 8:30, 9 o'clock. They'll look at me, well, let's go back and have a drink now.
This is prime time.
This is when we should have been coming out.
Yeah.
Right? So generally what I try to do is I'll run that split program, and then if it's if it's a day that it's going to be cloudy, overcast, or rain or whatever, then what I'll do to keep the clients from not getting tired, not getting burned out, if it's going to be cloudy, it's good in the middle of the day, particularly if there's a little bit of rain. Might even liven the fish up, cool the waters down a little bit. So I'll tell the guys, okay, so tonight we're going to, if there's a group of guys, like sometimes I have groups like up to six clients traveling together. So we'll have, I'll say to the guys, okay, so tonight we're going to fish, then we'll come back and we'll have a couple drinks. If that's what these guys like to do, have a couple drinks, sit around the bonfire, tell stories and stuff like that. Tomorrow's going to be not an early day, because tomorrow's going to be a rainy day, so we can all sleep in. We can all get up, have a nice breakfast, and then we'll go out and we'll be on the river for, we'll say 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we'll fish all midday, and then come back in the evening, have a nice supper, and then if the next day is going to be one of them bright bluebird sunny days, you fished in the middle of the day today, you slept in the morning, you slept in the evening, you got your good sleep. Tomorrow morning, you got to get up at 3 or 3:30 again. You've just had really what I consider an easy day, because you slept in the morning, you slept in and had a good sleep in the afternoon. And that, it took me a while to start to push those split sessions like that. And now that I do, like, most guys prefer that.
Yeah.
Because, with those long days, man, you get burnt out. I know I do as a guide, but I'm also not the one standing out there casting and casting and casting. And if it's really hot and, you're sweating, you're probably not drinking or eating properly, so you're going to get dehydrated and all that stuff. Take that time, sit down, and be on your game. Have your helmet on when the game starts.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time. Like, if you're only there for 5 days or a week-long fishing trip, you think, man, I got to get in as much fishing time as I can. No, that's wrong. In my opinion, that's wrong. I know the more time that your fly's in the water, the better chance that you have of catching a fish. But if you're not on your game when the game's on, and you're tired, you're not feeling it because you just made a million casts in the heat, you're tired, burnt out, maybe you're just starting to daydream a little bit. And then all of a sudden, that's when things are happening. I like to try to condition my guys over the course of the week to, okay, this, I'm looking at the weather going, okay, this day here is not going to be good in the middle of the day. So let's fish early in the morning, late at night, take the middle of the day off, have a nap, maybe even just relax. Take your sightseeing or something like that. It's more relaxing than standing in the river and beating yourself with the sun beating on you and all that, right? And then look at the weather for the day after that and go, okay, so this day looks like, we're not going to have to get up early. So I try to organize their time on the water so it's the most beneficial to them attaining the goals that they have. Now, if their goal, I have people like husband and wife that come, in a situation like that, they might not be there for the fish.
Yeah.
They might be there for the vacation to get away because they have a busy professional lifestyle and they don't want to get up early in the morning. They want to fish from 9 o'clock in the morning until, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then that's their fishing day. That's all their expectations are, is to just fish in the middle of the day. And then they're going to have their supper and, have a drink of wine, sit by the campfire in the evening or something like that. That's a completely different setup. It's a very easy setup for me, but it's probably not going to produce the most fish for them.
Yeah.
But as long as they know that coming in, that's no big deal, right?
Yeah. I really like that, what you got going on there. That's pretty cool, because when you see people get tired at the end of the day or whatever, and it's, the last chance to be catching fish and they've almost given up. Like, I've had enough people kind of, you see they're a little checked out. They've either had a good day or it was a tough day, and they just don't see it happening, and then they stop trying as hard as they were. And it's like, that's, it's a tough one. So it's either like, a little food and snack, a little break,
Yeah, I mean, for you, all you can do is, like, if you got the raft, you could just take a midday break. I mean, for me, I'm physically going back to a lodge where they can lay down on their bed and have a nap. That's a big difference, right? Whereas you just have a client for the day, and for you to do a split day, either way, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah.
For you guys, like, you're still awake, you're still up, you're still on the river, you're still in your waders. They're not really getting a chance to relax and sleep. But if you could give them that midday break where you're, cooking them a lunch or a snack or something, like, where they just take their brain off of the casting and they're not physically using their arm and stuff like that, and they're putting calories back in, and they're, you know what I mean? That's gonna totally benefit the latter part of the day. Like, some guys are just keeners, man, and they just want to fish from the time that they get on the water to the time that they're done. Whether they feel like they have to because it's the only day that they have to go, or whether they feel they have to because they paid so much money to be there. But I can tell you, if from not only experiences of being on trips myself, now I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking into your listeners who maybe don't have a lot of experience on fishing trips, you're going to benefit from listening to exactly what your guide tells you. Yeah. So if he tells you that, the evening fishing is better than the morning fishing predominantly, then he's telling you that you don't really have to spend as much time in the morning fishing as what you do in the evening.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah, fish, for instance, I'll give an example. Eagle River, Labrador. I guided there for years for Atlantic salmon, one of the best places imaginable for catching large amounts of fish. But again, you're susceptible to one river. If the run's late, runs early, all those factors come into play. But that particular river, and I know some guys would argue this, but that particular river doesn't even come alive until 8:30 in the morning. Like, the guys that get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning to go down and fish, they're not hooking a whole lot more fish than the average person's hooking through on the course of a day. Like, you know what I mean? If they're hooking average X amount of fish in a day, the people that got up and went fishing before breakfast, their numbers at the end of the week aren't much higher.
Yeah. I've experienced that with, like, steelheading, because we have such a good walk and wade. Like, the Cowichan River has such a good walk and wade opportunity. that, if you're not there before light, you're not the first person on that spot. You might even be the second or third person to fish that spot, which doesn't stress me out anymore. But of course, when you're first getting into it, you're like, I have to be first there.
No.
But most of my steelhead have been caught after like 12. So, there's 4 hours of walking around and doing all that. Mind you, I'll still go do that if I'm walking and waiting. I'm still waking up early to like get there early and fish, because that's my one day a week or whatever. That's what I want to do. I don't even care, if it's not the best. But I've full on noticed that most of my fish are, once the water's warmed up a bit, they're starting to do their thing, whatever it is, and then that's when I'm getting fish. So, I try to make sure, like, okay, I want to be on this section of the river for this time, because that's where I think that I'll have the best luck. And the time wise, I know that the water's warmed up a little bit and I'd like to be there, versus, come that time and I'm like, oh, let's do lunch or something. Like, I'll eat before or I'll eat after, probably way after, and probably drink water way after when I'm leaving the river, and use the washroom as well, because I completely forgot of all my bodily functions while fishing. As I'm sure a lot of people experience when they're hardcore into it. But yeah, now with like being on a raft, or I got my Watermaster, I find it a lot less stressful, because I'm like, if someone's in the spot I want to fish, I just keep going. I can fish water that, walk and wade can't really get to. And then I feel more, I don't like feeling pressured, especially when I'm swinging for steelhead. Like, I'll let people go ahead of me almost all the time, because I'd rather like fish it efficiently and feel good about it that way, versus like running through a run just to like make sure I was first and then get to the next run first, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's definitely an evolution on, like you with the timing and stuff. You start to notice things and you start to realize like, oh, okay, like it was a cold morning, or it's super cloudy, like we could fish all day, or it's super bright, like this is the time where I would rather not fish and, refuel up and have some rest. I like that. I definitely, if I was out fishing and, being a guide, I'll always now listen to my guide, whether I think I know more than them or not. I think that's important.
Never try to guide the guide.
Never try to guide the guide. I mean,
but before we get on another tangent, I do have to let you know this. I didn't realize how much battery this was going to eat on my phone.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what?
And I don't have a plug-in on this phone, because I don't know, it's full of dirt or something. So I have to charge it with the wireless charger. So I can't just plug it in, right? So it just come up and told me and it was fully charged when I got on the phone with you. But it says I got 15% battery left, so I just don't want to get cut off halfway through a conversation.
No, I got other things as well. I gotta go pick up someone.
And the viewers your listeners probably heard us babble about all of our experiences enough anyways, as it is, but hopefully they learned something.
When are they wrapping this up? Well, David, it was a real pleasure having you on. I really enjoyed talking with you, so thank you for that and sharing the time that you had and the knowledge.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Appreciate you having me on for sure. And we got two things we got to change. You haven't fished for striped bass. You haven't fished for Atlantic. So let's get that dialed in.
Twist my arm. And I guess for the viewers, if you want to go through your podcast and your website and everything to where they can find you.
Well, the website's basically, it's nice and simple. It's David Hartlin, Hartlin, guiding, davidhartlinguiding.com. David Hartlin Guiding all over social media. So I keep it pretty simple.
Okay.
So just all you got to do is do a Google search for David Hartlin, spelled Lin, and I'll pop up. I got a YouTube channel. Everything's accessible through my website, so there's links to everything on there. I got there's all kinds of stuff on my website. It's more than just selling fish and chips that I do. There's a lot of different things on there. I got David Hartlin Guiding TV, so it's got all kinds of videos on there from hunting, fishing, fly tying, instructional, gear reviews, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on there that people can check out. It doesn't cost you anything. You can subscribe, and you'll get monthly newsletters of certain deals on fishing trips around the world and hunting trips around the world if you're into hunting too. So yeah, pretty easy to find.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, I'll definitely have that all in the description down below, but it's good for people to hear it. So, yeah, once again, I really appreciate and value your time. So, thank you very much. And yeah, I guess tight lines. You'll be tying a lot of flies for the next foreseeable future. But yeah, hope you get on the water soon.
Yeah, this was a white shirt, but I tie a lot of green bombers, so.
Okay. Yeah, I feel that. You look at your fingers and you're like, what have I? Oh, yes, I've been tying flies all day.
I look like the Grinch.
Yeah. Right on, David. Well, yes. Thanks again.
All right, brother.
Chat soon.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.